Every held item holds more than just tricky mechanics, they hold secret lore. From slathering your Scyther in a coat of metal to evolve it into Scizor, to the Dragon Fang summoning a dragon of peace to the world, and even using Z crystals broken off of Ultra Necrozma now being used for massive damage. There are over 118 different held items in Pokemon with secret lore on why they exist, why Pokemon use them, and of course, how they even work in battles. So now after tricking out my team with every single item, I can now bring to you the hidden lore and mechanics of every held item. Howdy there, I'm Krillik, connecting the world through Pokemon, and we have a doozy today. If you're looking for any specific item, I have everything categorized in chapters by what they do, evolution, stat changing, status effects, so on and so forth, and then they are mostly alphabetical with very few exceptions. Most of these lore connections are ones you will not find anywhere else. You will not find anyone else talking about them. You will not find it in the trivia sections of Bulbapedia or Cerebi. Yet, here I have it all. And I won't be wasting any more time, so let's dive right in. Our first category is a double header under items that evolve Pokemon when being held, the Deep Sea Scale and Deep Sea Tooth. These items belong to Gorbis and Huntail in that respective order, both being evolutions of Clamperl. These two are eels, and as it turns out, even if your Clamperl isn't holding one of these, then, at least by the anime standards, your Clamperl can still evolve. All you need to do is have it swimming around waters where either of these Pokemon are typically found, and the abundance of broken down scales or teeth in the water will help them evolve, which even tells us a very natural way in which Clamperl can evolve without needing to be traded away. Too bad that doesn't exist in the games, and you're stuck with the gestating egg of an eel that only knows 4 moves, which is pretty rough. But why is it the Tooth and Scale respectively? Aren't they eels? Well, yes, and as it turns out, eels do have scales, at least some of them do, but they are embedded within their thick skin, allowing them to have that smooth and slippery surface to them. Though again, that's not to say every single eel has that, so it makes sense then why Huntail wouldn't have scales, as it is inspired by the Gulper eel. Unfortunately, this mistake made by Arceus does not have teeth, but it does have a massive mouth and a number of similar traits, like a glowing tail that does attract its prey to it. I suppose that they just really wanted to make Huntail a bit intimidating and give it those big old chompers that the Gulper eel does not have. These are very simple items and very clean, as many of our evolution items will be, so we can already move on to our next held item. The Dragon Scale is used by Seadra to evolve into Kingdra, but as we will find with a number of other items, this is a naturally occurring scale within this species. This all begins with Japan calling seahorses Tatsu no Toshigo, which back translates literally to illegitimate child of a dragon. This is a long-standing story or myth that I could not find a singular origin of, but I mean, come on, look at a seahorse and tell me it doesn't look like it could be a dragon one day. Nevertheless, scientists within the world of Pokemon will see that Seadra begin to express a gene within their DNA that hadn't been seen when it was but a little horsey. This gene seems to then betray their hidden origin because they do exist within the Water 1 and Dragon 8 group as well, and given enough time, this gene will allow Seadra to develop thicker scales on their bodies, being the dragon scales themselves, not just one. This scale is noted to be directly thick, very tough, and flexible, perfect for a Pokemon that is becoming stronger, fighting more, and can't have thick, interlocking scales preventing it from swimming. And whether it develops more of these scales that allow it to slowly transform, or it simply needs to develop one scale so it can serve as a catalyst for its evolution, isn't made 100% clear in lore. Sure, the held item itself is a pretty decently sized scale though, being too large to fit in your hand even. So this might even mean that the scales we use to help evolve Seadra into Kingdra come from a much larger unknown Kingdra, an ancient Kingdra even, which may even play into the classic tale of Journey to the West, where we find the Azure Dragon of the East, one of the 4 auspicious beasts, even noted to be the Dragon King. So maybe out there somewhere is a true Kingdra as per its namesake, shedding scales imbued with draconic energy that then allows smaller Kingdra to evolve early. Because something I've held from you is that once a seahorse lives for 1,000 years, that is when it is said to become a dragon. As such, our Seadra should be living for that long, developing dragon scale after dragon scale in order to become the tried and true Kingdra they are meant to become. Here's the first set, not in perfect alphabetical order, nor in the right order for evolution, the Dubious Disc and the Upgrade. both being items that are specific to Porygon. Starting with Upgrade, it is a transparent device somehow filled with all sorts of DNA. It was produced by Silphco, and this upgrade, and Porygon in general, was a prized possession of Silphco. So much so that when Team Rocket attacked, they tried to be sure that Porygon couldn't be taken away from them. After all, you don't want terrorists also becoming cyber-terrorists that, at least by anime standards, would eventually be able to travel literally through cyberspace and end up anywhere. Actually, there's even someone who is standing in the corner of the building who gives you the TM for self-destruct in the original versions of these games. It's changed later on, and it's almost like they were willing to sacrifice the entire company to make sure Team Rocket didn't get their hands on Porygon, the Master Ball, or anything else that they were secretly developing, which I understand, but at the same time, that's a bit insane. That's a lot of lives you're, putting at risk there. Anywho, Upgrade does exactly that to Porygon, smoothing it out, giving it a better mesh, more polygons overall, and it looks really adorable actually. The upgrade was intended to allow it to work in space for planetary development reasons, though it isn't able to fully fly, but just levitate. It's also now noted to be artificially intelligent and capable of learning new behaviors on its own, including information it does not need to know. It develops a personality. It can also speak a language only spoken by other Porygon 2, and that only they can understand. As a result, it will sometimes perform motions or abilities that are not in its programming. I would be more scared, but it's Porygon. As long as it isn't seeking revenge on Pikachu for shifting the blame on it for what happened long ago in the anime episode, I think we're fine. Otherwise, we might have two Pokemon, constantly coming after Pikachu soon, not just Mimikyu. Now, as we decide to try and hit the upgrade button a second time, things get nasty for poor little Porygon as it evolves into Porygon Z with the help of the Dubious Disc from Porygon 2. This item is noted to be created by an unknown individual with the intent to allow Porygon to work in alien dimensions. Unfortunately, there was an unplanned error in the programming that then corrupted Porygon Z and prevented it from fulfilling its purpose. Instead, the resulting Pokemon began showing highly erratic, unstable behavior and twitchy movements, making it difficult to work with for research. As a result, it is believed the experiment to create Porygon Z was a failure. This has been attributed to the incompetence of the engineer improperly updating its programming. Now, I want to throw out a theory, and it is that maybe Porygon Z might not actually be a failure. It's just existing simultaneously between planes of existence somehow. After all, its head is physically no longer attached to itself, its eyes have changed, which really remind me of a slew of different eyes across anime that allow people to see beyond our realm, and for some reason the item is still stated to be loved by Porygon. What if the programming did work then? What if Porygon Z can't exactly work in other dimensions, but it can at least see them and is processing multiple realities at once, something that would be entirely alien to our own senses? What's interesting is that we can find this disc first on Route 225 or within Team Galactic HQ, revealing to us who the culprit is. For on the opposite side of a lake, north of the house on Route 225, you'll find this item, as if someone was trying to throw it away before anyone else could get it. That this was one of the many dubious discs created, with one of them being brought to Team Galactic. But who would do that other than someone who claims to be a brilliant scientist? Someone who worked for a man seeking to create a new universe. Someone who would need a Pokemon who could work in an alternate or rather alien world. And the scientist who likely created this disc would then be Pluto, lead scientist of Team Galactic, at least someone under him. This would also serve as a great pun, since even though it seems to have a positive intent in making Porygon even better, it was for nefarious or dubious reasons. The Electrizer is used to evolve Electabuzz into Electivire, a box packed with a tremendous amount of electric energy. Now, Pokemon often just need a little kickstart, something to pump them full of energy so they can trigger their evolution or even just obtain it in general. What's wild is that the more energy you put into a Pokemon, the more likely they are to evolve. Something that we see in Pokemon Legends ZA, only on a whiteboard trying to solve why some Pokemon evolve while others don't. And it's because their bodies adapt to regulate the energy. Some can reach a higher state, catalyze it, and evolve. Others just have to use up the energy they've been given. And in the case of even Pokemon like Electabuzz and Electivire here, we can see the proof. On one hand, yes, you can give this item to your Electabuzz, but did you ever wonder why they gather in thunderstorms to get hit by lightning? Sure, they enjoy it and it makes them stronger as they consume the energy, but as it turns out, this is just their way of trying to evolve. We can see this in full action by looking at Mount Coronet in Legends Arceus, a place teeming with energy thanks to Giratina's Rampage and all the lightning strikes. Atop the mountain, the last Pokemon you will encounter are Electabuzz and an Alpha Electivire. All too much of a coincidence to ignore, this is done on purpose. An Electabuzz struck with immense power now overflowing with it not only evolves, but then becomes an alpha thanks to the overwhelming amount of energy held in that godly strike indirectly from Giratina. So yeah, you can either have a naturally evolved Electivire by nearly getting nuked by the world's worst thunderstorm, or you can hand it a generator and it'll suck out all the energy to evolve your pick. In opposition to this, we have the Everstone, an item that prevents a Pokemon from evolving altogether. It stops evolution by level up, friendship, moves, using items on your Pokemon, trading, everything. The use of it even allows you to change what Pokemon is born from an egg when you have them breed, giving you their regional or normal forms, so this goes way deeper than you might think. What's even stranger is that there are Pokemon like Ash's Rowlet who don't want to evolve and are aware of this peculiar stone's power. Though that Rowlet went a bit overboard and decided to eat the stone, preventing it from ever evolving unless someone decides to perform surgery on a Rowlet. But as it turns out, this isn't just a magical thing, but is considered biological, because there is a question within Pokemon Scarlet and Violet within the biology class's final exam that asks about the Everstone, which makes sense since it literally deals with evolution, but it's nice to have that confirmation. Now, I could get into a slew of different things that will try to philosophically say how Japanese people give stones as gifts and tell people to never change, but there's no real support specifically for that from what I could find whatsoever, and at the end of the day, a stone is strong. It is unchanging. No matter how the wind howls, the mountain cannot bow to it. In other words, no matter how much things might change and your environment might change, the world changes around you, the Everstone will always remain as it always has been, unchanging. And so too will the Pokemon holding it. While the Eviolite does boost the defense and special defense of a Pokemon, it only does so if the Pokemon holding it has not fully evolved. So that's why I have it placed in evolution-based items rather than stat-affecting items. It is literally as simple as it sounds. If the Pokemon can still evolve, then it can hold an Eviolite. This, though, does not work for Pokemon like Pikachu in Cosplay, Cantonian Farfetch'd, or other Pokemon who have regional forms who evolve, but they don't, or even Pokemon with the G-Max factor, such as Pikachu, Meowth, or Eevee, since they all cannot evolve amongst many other Pokemon. The Pokemon holding this item at the exact moment within the game that they are in must be able to evolve, or this item is useless. Now, it is noted as a mysterious evolutionary lump, while having the "ite" suffix to denote that, of course, it is a stone, or more aptly, a mineral. Its Japanese name is a pun noted as Shinja no Kiseki, meaning either evolution stone or evolution miracle. There's consistently nothing in the games explaining its presence. Looking at repeatable methods only results in trash cans, shops, and the Dream Radar, which means nothing, as many things are found in all of those methods. But there's one thing in particular that might tell us something about it, and that is Side Mission 100, Starmie on High in Legends ZA. Now, this is easily one of my favorite side missions because it 100% confirms for us, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Starmie is from space, as we literally summon it down from the stars as part of this event. But you don't get the Eviolite from the fallen Starmie. You get it from the leader of the Starmie cult. And to go back on what I said about trash cans, the only trash cans with Eviolites in them are the ones in Pokemon Village, a place without people, but where Pokemon live happily and freely away from them, Wulfric being the only person who visits them to make sure that they are okay. What the Eviolite might be is just a concentration of energy positively formed physically from Pokemon who have a connection with people and haven't evolved yet, or just general energy given physical form, much like Mega Stones after a rogue Mega battle. What they are otherwise really is just a mystery as per their in-game description. Onto the various forms of incense, each one of them having their own special effect that I will just clump all into this section here so as to not split them all up. They are literally incense holders that you can place incense sticks into to ensure that they don't burn your house down, but can still enjoy their aromas. As of the current generation, these aren't needed in order to hatch the baby form of Pokemon like they used to be, such as Munchlax, as they just hatch by default, though these incense do have their own additional special effects. Beginning with the Lax incense, this is likely filled with earthy, floral, or woody smells, things that promote relaxation chemicals to that brain of yours. Who best to relax than a Pokemon that never strikes first? Wobbuffet, who would originally then produce a why-not egg thanks to this aroma. Alternatively, it reduces the opponent's accuracy by 10% when they are targeting the holder of this incense, lowering the anxiety of being hit even more. The Sea Incense brings about smells of the salty sea, fair and simple. It boosts the power of water-type moves by 20%, and originally allowed a baby Azurill to be produced, which honestly makes no sense on the surface because they are only found in rivers and lakes, not wide open areas like the seas. You could say this might be a pun or a reference towards sea bunnies, which are a species of sea slug, which is a nudibranch, just to be entirely clear, something that Shellos is inspired by. We could also tie in swamp rabbits, who are cottontail rabbits found in swamps and wetlands, as you would have guessed. And then there's the moon rabbit as an inspiration, since that's a long-standing story in Japan, and since it is a fairy type, we have the association of fairies with aliens and the moon, and it all comes together from there as the moon affects the tides of the waters. Also, I just realized seas and oceans get water delivered to them from rivers or vice versa. It all depends on the topology of it all. For full incense, it does something very interesting. It allows Snorlax to have, or rather allowed it to have, a Munchlax child. Now, of course, normally in nature, animals will only have babies when the environment can support them. This is strictly through diet, as it takes a lot of energy to have a child, also amount of space and a couple of other factors, but bear with me. So if you have plenty of food, then your body will say, yeah, I can have a couple more, and before you know it, you have a soccer game, piano recital, and 2 theater performances to go to in a single day, thanks to your brand new supersized family. What this then does for Snorlax is it literally allows a Pokemon that eats 900 pounds of food a day to feel as though the environment can support another of its kind, because it feels full. And so, it has a baby Munchlax as a result. When it isn't being used for breeding, it otherwise functions to make the holder move last in battle. After all, when you're full or even overly full, your body is going to prioritize metabolizing your food, making you sleepy as a result. Meaning, no, it was never the turkey on Thanksgiving, you just stuffed your face more than your body is used to, and that's okay. I'm a big eater myself. 2-pound pizza, down in 30 minutes or less. Call me the Pizza Hut of deliveries to my stomach. The smells wafted out of this item are likely peppermint, vanilla, green apple, and citrus, by the way. Items that will make you feel or trick your body into feeling full. Onto the Luck Incense, producing a Happiny for Chansey and Blissey. Why do they need to be lucky in order to produce a baby? Well, that's because they are strictly an all-female species, not even hermaphroditic as we see in Starmie, canonically. It also explains why they're such caring Pokemon, as they are not only nurses, but also very caring towards baby Pokemon, and Pokemon in general who need help. This won't even be the last time we even see Happiny either, as they do carry a little something with them at all times to mimic the feeling of having an egg, which I just realized is a little bit sad, as it's similar to a mother going through a hard time trying to have a child that they truly desire, but for some reason, likely medical on either her side or the significant other's side, they are struggling to do. When not making me feel sad about the struggle of trying to have a child, the Luck Incense also doubles the prize money from battles when held. Incense gets into a lot of beliefs, manifestations, so on and so forth, and in this case there's tons of different smells someone might traditionally associate with wealth or abundance, like sandalwood or bayberry. I don't know personally, mainly because this is a belief and it isn't measurable by science, though I will not yuck your yum. Actually, as a side, luck has been noted to be a measurable thing in the world, and I really should have a video all on that. Long story short, the more you do for others, the more likely that in your time of need, someone will come to your aid, being denoted as a stroke of luck through your connections. Up next is the Odd or Mysterious Incense, noted to be exotic smelling, while allowing Mr. Mime to bear a Mime Jr. child, which, sure, common stereotype that clowns and mimes are strange, and we did get the love child of them both to create Mr. Mime, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised. We really need a cuter version of Mr. Mime to be made, because Mime Jr. turning into that is a shame. But what's strange is that the first time we get this Incense, it is found in the final room of the Salacion Ruins, the same ruins that bears the Unknown. The next time would be in the Let's Go games and the Cerulean Cave, the same cave that bears Mewtwo. Both of these areas bear Pokemon with immense psychic power, literally some of the strongest psychic power in lore, and so this Incense might literally be a manifestation from psychic power or from a different realm altogether. Which Incense is often used in meditation, so once again, no greater level of shock here and an easy connection, especially as it does also increase the power of psychic type moves by 20%. Onto pure Incense, I'll claim now is just a white herbal incense, especially as it does allow Chimecho to have a Chingling baby. These Pokemon are associated with Fuden, which have very pretty sounds as they are glass wind chimes. These Fuden also are meant to ward off evil spirits and misfortune as a whole. As such, a white herbal incense would follow this idea perfectly. You'll see white sage in specific be used in many rituals, traditions, religions, all to purify an individual of the misfortune or evil spirits haunting them. Growing up in a Spanish household, I remember when I moved out of my family's house and into a place that was deemed haunted, and my mom swore up and down I needed to sage the place. I didn't. I do believe in ghosts and that there might be a scientific explanation as to why they exist and how to keep them at bay, maybe, but I didn't believe it enough to wave around some burning herbs in my apartment that didn't even want me having candles in the first place as per the contract. This pure incense does work in this way as well, by the way, lowering wild Pokemon encounter rates by a third as long as that Pokemon holding it leads the party, which makes me now imagine a D&D group of Pokemon where one of them is a Cleric Audino waving around a censer full of incense. If any artists draw anything I say, tag me on Blue Sky, or throw it in the community Discord. I also like to throw fan art into a slideshow at the beginning of my streams every Friday, so that's just always a fun thing to do. Moving on to Rock Incense, which probably smells earthy and salty, allowing Sudowoodo to have a Bonsly baby because they are petrified wood and not real wood. It simply boosts rock-type moves by 20%, and that's all there is to it. Our semi-final incense is the Rose Incense, allowing Roselia and Roserade to have Badoo as a baby because of course the released smells of a rose would then attract pollinators that these Pokemon need in order to produce more of their own kind. Strangely, the first time Roselia really appears is along the same routes as Volbeat and Illumis only, meaning that they are likely the pollinators for this Pokemon. Simple once again, Rose Incense smells like roses, and it boosts grass-type moves by 20%. Meanwhile, our last incense is Wave Incense, which I guess we may as well call Ocean Incense, considering it allowed Mantine to have a baby Mantine. Maybe this one is less salty and more about the general green algae smell you notice at the beach. I'm really not sure. I'm going heavily off of vibes here, especially as I have a severely underdeveloped sense of smell. I've also realized that the majority of these, or rather all of them, say that they're exotic smells. Oops. Oh well. This one is just a strange one in general, since it also boosts water moves by 20%, and I suppose Mantine can smell the waves, which would put it in the mood to have some babies. And that kind of makes sense, since the waters being moved around would move around oxygen, stir up the water above and below, allow water to mix, and for smells to be released into the air, so yeah. That's the only plausible explanation, and I'm ready to move out of the incense mini category. But before we continue, I just want to say thank you for watching so far. If you're enjoying, be sure to subscribe for deep dives like this, because there's literally months worth of content on this channel just like this. I also want to thank members of the channel. If you want behind the scenes info, early access to videos, and members exclusive videos, become a member for as little as $3 a month. It makes a massive difference and means I can take on massive videos like this and create them for everyone. Lastly, if you were a Pokemon, what held item would you want? I personally would enjoy one of the Masks of Ogerpon because yes, at the very end we will be talking about legendary held items, and I also would love to read more of your comments as I just enjoy reading them. I highlight one at the end of every single video, and they appease the almighty algorithm alongside likes, shares, and hyping the video, which you should do. But enough of all that, thank you again for watching, and on with the video. Okay, I know the lab coat is like my whole thing with this channel, but I am facing like 80, 90 degree Fahrenheit weather in a like office that is upstairs, so lab coat has to come off unless you want me to turn into a puddle. Moving on though, the King's Rock crowns literal kings as Slowpoke evolves into Slowking, and Poliwhirl evolves into Politoed with the help of this item. In one case, the King's Rock attracts a Shelder to bite onto Slowpoke's head, but luckily it seems like the crown stops the teeth from going too far into its brain, allowing it to stay not only alive, but also stimulate its brain to become far more intelligent. Currently, it grants all attacking moves that do not already have a chance to flinch a 10% chance of causing each target to flinch. This, of course, is the sign of a king. When royalty moves, then all may flinch in fear of what they may do next. Slowpoke and Poliwhirl in the wild do have the chance of being found holding these in a number of games alongside their evolved forms, clearly being naturally attracted to the King's Rock. They're also found in antique shops, and with Hariyama or Hawlucha, who are kings of the ring. As for why a crown is necessary to get a Politoed, when we look at it as the national symbol of Puerto Rico, we see that it has incredibly deep roots. It's found depicted on ancient ceramics, and only the males sing as they cry out for mates and claim their territory, all being fairly fitting for a king, I would say. And the longer the curled hair on Politoed's head is, the more Poliwag and Poliwhirl will obey, and the more other Politoed will respect it. A very vain group of kings they are. I don't know why I decided to script that out like I was possessed by the spirit of Yoda.
Curled hair makes great kings. Of hairs I have few. Small and white like peach fuzz they are.
I'm sorry. I'll move on now. Much like the Electrizer, the Magmarizer is full of magma energy and is absorbed by Magmar during a trade in order to allow it to evolve into Magmortar. What's wild is that there are only 2 regions where you can encounter a truly wild Magmortar. One is in the Galar DLC as part of the Crown Tundra, which does contain a volcano as part of the region. The other is in the Cobalt Coastlands as a massive mass outbreak, another place that has a truly active volcano and has a number of Magmar running around in said volcano. Cut and dry, they live in volcanoes for a reason, absorb the magma energy, and they evolve Little Boober. And yes, this is the only line that has boob in the name, Booby, Boober, and Booburn, which is why it's thought that they might be inspired by the bird known as the Booby, somehow. Either that or they just wanted boob to be a part of the name, which I can't complain because it's just fun to have an excuse to say that word in my videos. Slather up your Onix or your Scyther with a metal coat, trade them, and you will let them artificially evolve into Steelix or Scizor. That's not even a joke. The metal coat is basically an ointment made of some sort of metal mixture that you put onto your Pokemon and they evolve. Onix is able to do this by itself by living long enough and burrowing through the tunnels of the world, while Scyther is only seen to do this in the wild once, to my knowledge, as we can find a Scizor living wildly amongst the Totem Komodo, a Pokemon that does shed tough metallic scales in an incredibly hot environment, allowing Scyther to then take them and evolve. This metallic coating also boosts the power of Steel-type Pokemon by 20%. After all, you should polish your metals regularly to avoid any level of tarnishing or rust that might occur otherwise. This allows your Steel types to really stay on their prime game. I said we'd come back to Happiny, and here we are with the Oval Stone, something that is given to Happiny, allowing it to evolve once it is leveled up during the day while holding it. It is a rock that looks like an egg, effectively training your Happiny to be the caretaker that it will eventually become, while also making it very happy and desire evolution in order to be better at protecting this life that it believes will be on its way. These can be carved from rock in general to be created, which Brock did for his newborn Happiny that then helped it evolve. Also, that Happiny is absolutely a beast. It didn't have huge power apparently because they can't have that ability, but it definitely seemed as though it did from the feats it was pulling off with ease. Onto the Prism Scale, otherwise known as the Beautiful Scale. It is an item that is naturally produced by Feebas in the wild, while also being the item necessary to trade a Feebas in order to make it evolve into Melodic. This item is incredibly similar to Seadra and Kingdra, as this Pokemon is also in the Water 1 and Dragon A groups, though it is a dragon in the most literal original definition of a dragon, so don't get upset about a sea serpent being considered a dragon. It's one of the OGs. Now, of course, these scales would represent the colors that we see on Melodic's tail that looks like stained glass. shining in rainbow colors, and is the shortcut to beauty considering Pokemon contests no longer exist within the games. And no, we are not counting the Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl versions. As it turns out, the sudden growth of this is entirely possible. Many fish naturally develop new iridescent scales as they age, especially koi or metallic varieties. These dragon scales, quote-unquote as they're called, or sparkles, are harmless and are simply reflective guanine crystals in the fish's skin. Though this might not always be the case, so keep an eye on your fish if you notice strange scaling. This then means that Feebas, living long enough, once again just like Scizor, could then become this new powerful form, aging not through evolution, but rather time and true aging itself. Maybe it becomes this rainbow fish situation before it actually becomes melodic, which would be pretty cool to see. The Protector is noted to be extremely stiff and heavy, but when we trade a Rhydon holding it, it fuses the Protector to its body and evolves into Rhyperior, which it definitely does more than that, as there's a lot more Protector-like growths all over its knees, and is that one on its crotch? Like, oh my god, I never realized Rhyperior had a cup to protect its genitals. Like, I suddenly love that. It's stupid, it's dumb, it's great. In all seriousness though, it has now evolved for less brain power and more muscle, even though the brain is also a muscle. Becoming stronger, more durable, volcanic eruptions and masterwork swords do nothing to its body and will actually deflect most incoming attacks, parrying the foe and then drilling into them with its horn. This Pokemon has genuinely just become more confident thanks to the defenses that it needed, because originally it was on all fours, then stood up with its evolution, which it kinda leaned forward as if to protect its soft, vulnerable underside, and now it fully stands as a wall to foes thanks to the Protector, something that really is just armor. The Razor Claw is the literally detached claw of a Sneasel or Weavile, being an item that increases the holder's critical hit ratio by 1 stage and allows Sneasel to evolve into Weavile at night, or Hisuian Sneasel to evolve into Sneaselure during the day while being held and leveling up. These are noted to be wickedly sharp claws, perfect for raking enemies, something that of course the claws of Weavile and Sneasler are designed to do. Weavile's even causes frostbite, while Sneaselur's allow it to inflict a ridiculous amount of damage through its signature move Dire Claw, which has a 50% chance to crit with a 30% chance to also cause poison paralysis or the drowsy condition. These Pokemon really got nerfed when climate change hit Sinnoh and it got warmer. Ultimately though, this claw is representative of not only their power or underhanded nature, but more specifically, the destruction their claws cause. You can either be pinpoint accurate and hits an organ, or in the case of these claws, you could just destroy everything you touch and every hit becomes critical then. Along the same lines as the Razor Claw, we have the Razor Fang, a sharp and pointed fang that seems as though it might be able to pierce straight through anything at all as per its description. It grants the holder a 10% chance to cause targets to flinch with any moves that don't already have a flinch chance. Basically, it's another King's Rock, but you can use it to evolve Gligar into Gliscor. The showing of fangs might be an intimidation tactic, or alternatively, I think we'd all flinch if some incredibly sharp fangs just sank into our skin to draw blood from us like they use them to. Except you, back there, I know what you're thinking. But honestly, when I look at this item, I swear that little bit of tan at the top is like the gum line or something still attached to the fang. So it's literally, once again, another fallen item from a Pokemon. Gliscor in this case, of course. And they're massive. Oh my god! Gary hands one over to Ash, and it is the entire length of his palm. Even if we say that it's just a 10-year-old's hand, that's a whopping 3-inch fang. That is bigger than your average thumb. Something that is roughly 2 inches. Like, dear lord, of course someone would flinch at that. That's a horrifying thing to imagine. One of those sinking completely into you? Its effects and description make a lot of sense now. The Reaper Cloth is one of my personal favorite items in lore because it is noted to be a cloth imbued with horrifyingly strange spiritual energy. With no other effect, you trade Dusclops who holds it, and then it will evolve into the Grim Reaper that is known as Dusk Noir. And the best part, you can get it multiple times by going into Turnback Cave. The very same cave, and even specifically from the room that we find Giratina in. It will come back time and time again as long as Giratina isn't there, all thanks to the fact that Giratina's mere presence essentially leaves so much residual spiritual energy behind that this can be created. This item also fulfills the needs of Dusclops, a Pokemon that consumes literally everything as though it were a black hole. Now it becomes completely full on this spiritual energy, which is why it does evolve, and I think that's pretty neat. Train a Spritzee with a Sachet and it will evolve into a Aromatisse. This is because the Sachet is filled with fragrant perfumes that are too overwhelming for us but loved by them. In fact, the diet of a Spritzee will determine what type of perfumes it releases when it does evolve into a Aromatisse. This is all just one big reference towards plague doctors who would stuff their beaks with various herbs, odors, you name it, all because they thought it would ward off diseases, and to some degree, depending on what they stuffed the tip of their beak with, it actually worked. Plague doctors were strangely good at keeping themselves from getting sick from what I understand, but terrible, absolutely horrible at making sure other people got better or that other people didn't get sick, since they kind of spread the plague around without getting sick themselves. Wild stuff, really. What's in the sachet specifically is likely flowers, seeds, herbs, you name it. Any naturally growing substance that can also be found in the wild, as Spritzee would be naturally attracted to these items already as part of its diet. There are a slew of sweets for Alcremie that can be used to help it evolve from Milcery. All this process is the whipping of cream into whipped cream, specifically Eton Mess, which is a British dessert made of fruit, meringue, and whipped cream, thus explaining why we have the various sweets added on top of this Pokemon. In fact, even the time of day changes what cream or what type of cream it turns into. Some, like matcha cream, makes sense considering the tea leaves used for matcha, like the dark and matcha cream Alcremie, can be created only at night. Other than that though, these sweets are really just those decorations that serve as a part of this Pokemon, and it is keenly aware of their existence, with Ghost Milcery actively seeking out a sweet so it could evolve. The last of the evolutionary items, the Whipped Dream, allows you to evolve a Swirlix into a Slurpuff. It's a soft and sweet treat made of fluffy, puffy, whipped and whirled cream. And considering Slurpuff is yet another meringue-based Pokemon, we have an easy second tie here with a cherry right on top. As part of the evolution, the Whipped Dream does become a part of Slurpuff's head, completing the look as though it were a chubby little kid who is allowed to dive headfirst into a vat of vanilla or chocolate like some strange Batman villain, I guess. On to items that change your stats. I did play loose with that definition, as items that affect abilities or items that heal or cause damage are included in this as well, even though they aren't your actual stats. I just didn't want to separate them into another subcategory. We begin here with the ability Shield, which prevents the holder's ability from being changed or suppressed by any effect, even if the effect is directly caused by the holder, such as by roleplay or trace. It also protects the holder from effects that ignore abilities. For instance, if a Pokemon with Clear Body or Big Pecs is holding an ability Shield, and a Pokemon with Mold Breaker uses Leer, its defense will not be lowered. If a Pokemon with an ability Shield transforms into another Pokemon, either by using the move Transform or using the ability Imposter, it will still copy the opponent's ability. This copied ability will then be protected. It is only described as being a rather unique looking shield, though as I look at the colors, the shape, and especially that little star at the center, I not only see the shape of an anime style eye overall, I see the eye of Terapagos, and its colors being represented through this item. This item was introduced within Scarlet and Violet, so it would make sense that it's a Terapagos reference, especially as while it is in its terrestrial form, it is protected by a shield of its own, the Terra Shell, which, the Pokemon Shell, as per this description, contains the powers of each type. All damage-dealing moves that hit the Pokemon when its HP is full will not be very effective, except now we have the Ability Shield, which seems like a branching point of this power. The only current way to get it is at Delibird Presence, so at least for now, this is where our story on this item comes to a close. Though if you have any ideas for this item or any others, please do let me know. Same goes for if I miss anything along the way. Now, up next is the Absorb Bulb. This single-use bulb boosts the special attack if the holder is damaged by a water-type attack. Who would have guessed? You'll water the bulb, and it grows because it is the bulb of a plant. More interesting than this is that Roselia, the Oddish line, Cottony, Whimsicott, and Petalil are the only Pokemon who can be found with this item in the wild. Roses grow from bulbs, Petalil is literally the bulb Pokemon, but neither the cotton plants nor the Rafflesia grow from bulbs, that which Cottony and the Oddish line would grow into in that respective order. What I assume then is that while the plants don't grow from bulbs in real life, Oddish and Cottony must be bulbs themselves. Otherwise, there's no other real logical explanation I can think of, even though this seems very deliberate. As a held item, if the Adrenaline Orb is held by a Pokemon affected by Intimidate, then the item is consumed and its speed is increased by 1 stage. Although if you manually use it in Alola, it makes wild Pokemon more likely to call for help, or just flat out makes them call for help, depending on if you're playing the OG or the Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon games. You're literally watching a Pokemon get flooded with adrenaline and choose fight or flight, which is also why Intimidate is a trigger for this to work when a Pokemon is holding this item. It's what's going to help the Pokemon move despite the fear as adrenaline takes over. Though what's interesting is it looks like a bomb fused in all, so maybe when it explodes, it releases something similar to smelling salts or other sharp smells that trigger an immediate response in the brain. The Assault Vest raises the holder's special defense by 50%, but also prevents the holder from selecting any status moves except the first. The Assault Vest only prevents the Pokemon from choosing status moves, but not from using them. A Pokemon holding an Assault Vest can still be made to use status moves via Instruct or Dancer. If a Pokemon has selected a status move to use, but obtains an Assault Vest before executing the move, such as by Trick from a Pokemon with Klutz, the move can still be executed successfully for that turn. If the holder can only select status moves due to Encore, Torment, knowing no non-status moves that have any power to it, it is then forced to use Struggle. Dynamax does not negate the effects of this item, so it prevents the use of Max Guard. It's literally body armor used by people in an assault. Like if a team of soldiers were moving in on an assault, which even makes sense as to why they can't use any status moves except for me first. Whatever situation they're in, they have to be the first ones in and are on the full offensive. So then of course they need something that will protect them from ranged attacks, which would then be special attacks within Pokemon, hence the special defense increase. What's wild is that it even has pockets to place magazines, which kind of takes me back. Something I never talk about is that I was in Police Academy long ago and had to learn how to fire and reload standard issue handguns quickly, tactically, without looking at where my hands were going, all supposed to be on instinct, which is important when you're trying to protect not only the lives of others, but yourself as well. Making sure all your gear is within quick and easy reach, exactly as this vest does. And to sate your curiosity quickly, no, I did not become an officer. I realized it wasn't quite for me. I did get my forensic science and environmental science degrees, so there's that. Moving on to berries, all sorts of berries. They can be held items, and there's literally so many of them that I just wanted to at least mention them here rather than ignore them completely, because I feel like they deserve their own video altogether. Maybe a video like Loxton did long ago where I get the real-life fruit that every berry represents, because why not? Anywho, they're berries grown in the fine soil of the Pokemon world, all being natural, but having special effects that range from healing a Pokemon to making them roid out and blast your opponents with more power than a nuclear reactor. Also, just realized there are over 65 different berries in Pokemon. That would be an expensive video. That's a sign for people to become members if you want that video. I'm gonna move on now. The Berserk Gene, an item that no longer exists, but is a one-time use held item that doubles your Pokemon's attack stat, but guarantees confusion to resemble the blind rage that your Pokemon enters, something that we do see in the Detective Pikachu movie. This is of course Mewtwo's special item, and in Gold, Silver, and Crystal, it is programmed to always hold the Gene when encountered in the wild, but because you can only get Mewtwo via a time capsule or an event gift in those games, it doesn't hold it ever. And even if it did, Mewtwo would use the item immediately as per its effects. Of course, this is all just one big reference to Mewtwo going berserk the second it was awakened and destroying the lab, though that was a quiet rage, and we get to see it fly a little more off the handle in Cerulean Cave, especially in Pokemon Origins. The face of strained anger it makes in that is one of my favorite depictions because it just shows the emotion Mewtwo can have beyond a couple of eye twitches with those giant eyebrow muscles it has. And you know what we need? A giant spoon held item. I know we'll talk about a spoon item way later, but I want a giant spoon that's supposed to be Mewtwo's like it has in the manga. I just love it so much. Please give it to me. Bright Powder is a glittery powder that casts a tricky glare that lowers the accuracy of opposing Pokemon's moves by 10%. It is literally just light reflecting off powder blinding your eyes. What's crazy is that Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres, and Mewtwo hold it when traded from Gen 1 to Gen 2, as if their mere presence in the future causes a blinding light a la what we see in movies. Otherwise, Wurmple, Volbeat, and Alumis all hold it in the wild. The Firefly Pokemon makes sense. They turn their little butts around and flash you so you're blind. But why Wurmple? Well, it's definitely inspired by the Pipe Vine Swallowtail Caterpillar, horns, bumps, and all. But they don't drop flashbangs right in front of their predators to avoid getting eaten. The only thing I can think of is that Wurmple and this creature do have glaringly obvious colors to show that it isn't hiding from anything, as they are poisonous creatures. Still weird that it would be blinding to others that see it though. I also just don't know what this powder could be made from either, by the way, because if it was the same as what happens in a Firefly's abdomen, then this powder would be a single-use item. Maybe it's just some really shiny sand or some sort of particulate matter that they let off, some sort of powder, I'm not really sure. The Clear Amulet prevents the holder from having its stats lowered by other Pokemon's moves or abilities. However, this item doesn't protect the user from the effects of haze or clear smog. When held by a holder who has the ability Magic Bounce, being hit by Parting Shot will still force the holder to switch out. To me, this also has to be related to Terapagos. In fact, I would even say it reminds me of the strange crystals that we find in Pokopia, which of course, those also remind me of Terapagos, even though it isn't in the game yet. I also say yet because DLC is on its way, and I will be playing that live on stream when it drops. I need to find more Pokopia lore, and hopefully get more proof that it's a Winds and Waves prequel like I keep claiming. Once again though, this is just another charm or shield of sorts, likely brought into existence by the crystals that Terapagos has created. For Pokemon competition lovers, I will not be forgetting about the 5 different colored Scarves that only existed in Hoenn and Sinnoh. But long story short, they are just 5 different colored Scarves that gave boost to one of the 5 different contest stats. Cool, beautiful, cute, clever, and tough. Nothing crazy to talk about here. But hey, at least they were worn by Ruby's various Pokemon in the manga, who are very proud of them. Even though this really shows us that they aren't scarves, but just sashes worn on different parts of the body, like Swampert's arm or Mightyena's head. The float stone is literally called the pumice stone in direct translation, which yes, is a type of stone. It is in fact a highly porous, lightweight, extrusive volcanic rock formed when superheated, gas-rich lava erupts and cools rapidly. Its sponge-like texture makes it buoyant enough to float on water, so yes, it is literally a stone capable of floating. It also halves the weight of the Pokemon holding it, which is great if you think you're going to get hit by a move like Grass Knot, which does more damage the heavier you are. I am genuinely shocked and a little bit annoyed for some reason that it couldn't just be left alone as pumice stone in English, but whatever, it's fine, I suppose. The lagging tail does as the lax Incense did, delaying the holder to then move last in order. In literal translation, it is second batter tail, which only makes sense if used in a traditional Pokemon battle, as you would be acting second in turn. This tail is noted to be tremendously heavy while being designed after Onix, though never once is it shown to hold the item in the wild. Instead we have Slowpoke, Lickitung, Licky, Cufant, and Cabaraja, all as Pokemon that hold it in the wild. These are of course all slow-moving Pokemon. Lickitung and Licky less obviously seen as slow-moving, but when you have a tongue that extends over 13 feet or 4 meters in a second, then I don't think you'd be worrying about moving your legs that much either. I mean, look at that salamander's tiny little feet. Brother is waddling around everywhere it goes. Onto the Leek, the specialty item of Farfetch'd, as originally it was an ordinary Leek that sold at a cheap price, and it is now noted to be something that raises Farfetch'd's, however heck you say that, critical hit ratio by 2 stages as of Gen 3, and is later noted to be very long and stiff as of Generation 4. I was going to try and resist putting that stupid shot of Farfetch'd holding its Leek a little too close to its crotch, but now I have to. Like, low-hanging fruit is too easy to not take. This item also works for Surfetched, but it is literally just a sturdier and better Leek overall for this Pokemon, as that's what they use for food and for a weapon throughout their lives, so a good Leek is important for them. This also comes down to one big pun, which is a duck comes bearing spring onions, which basically means the perfect opportunity has arrived, since apparently duck tastes amazing with spring onions, which of course it does. The herby taste of long onions are pretty great, speaking as a Puerto Rican who ate them all the time and even grew some for a while. They were so fresh when I grew them myself. It was beautiful. But to close this item out, from Generation 6 onwards, Farfetch'd, Galarian Farfetch'd, and Surfetch'd will always get a critical hit when using moves with a boosted critical hit ratio while holding the Leek. For example, if it attacks with Leaf Blade, it is guaranteed to crit, which shouldn't be surprising with the sheer level of crit boosting power going on here. Who doesn't love leftovers? I do, my fiance doesn't, but that means I get to have more leftovers just for myself. And in the case of the Pokemon most often depicted with them, you bet Snorlax is happy to find a half-eaten morsel of food on its body that was hiding away in its fur. This item restores 1/16 of the holder's maximum HP, rounded down but not less than 1 at the end of each turn. Other than that, it literally is just some leftovers. You can even get them from restaurants in various locations like the Celadon City restaurant or Castelia Sewers. Take your pick. The Life Orb boosts the power of the holder's moves by 30%. However, the holder also loses 1/10 of its max HP each time it successfully lands an attack. This is the textbook definition of, if I use more power in my attacks, it's going to sacrifice some of my energy. A very anime thing to do. Thank you, Gon and Luffy, anytime you went into second gear. No idea if that still affects Luffy, by the way, but that's neither here nor there. This isn't as absurd as it might seem either, or as dangerous, because Pokemon are full of their own bioenergy that they use for their life force and their attacks. It's why if Yveltal turns a Pokemon to stone, they can come back to life eventually, as life energy just kinda comes back to them. It's something that they can restore. But they're also still susceptible to aging and disease, so this whole life energy thing gets very complicated within Pokemon. It's aura. It's all aura, and I'm hardly joking. Again though, at the end of the day, use more power, sacrifice your life energy, do more damage, and this is the catalyst for that equation. But we do find these naturally in places like Stark Mountain, the Ruins of Alph, Resolution Cave, Mount Lanakila, and a lot of other places where incredibly powerful Pokemon reside. It's almost like their presence is damaging to others, which kinda is. In short, the manga does show that controlling legendary Pokemon can kill you, and throughout all media, trainers get tired after a Pokemon battle, primarily if they are properly bonded with their Pokemon. This then also explains things like Ash's Greninja, Battle Bond, how we get tired after using Z moves, and of course why we faint when we run out of Pokemon in a battle. So then this Life Orb is like the physical manifestation of that energy, a drop of incredible power that can't be completely controlled, but can be used at the risk of one's own life. Because mortal creatures aren't meant to have that level of power, and I always love that as a concept in media. Speaking of incredible power, the Light Ball or Electric Orb is a special item for Pikachu to hold that doubles its attack and special attack. More than this, in every game where it exists, from Pokemon Emerald onward with the exception of Legends ZA, if held by either parent of a Pichu when the egg is produced, the Pichu that hatches will know the move Volt Tackle. This is the signature move of this line of Pokemon and their many forms, but as of Legends ZA, I believe it is the highest level a Pokemon needs to be in order to learn the move at a whopping level 99. All because breeding doesn't exist in that game. What is this item specifically though? Probably just Orb Lightning now contained, or one of those plasma globes filled with a noble gas that has a high electrode at the center. Nothing crazy, no idea how it constantly produces energy, but I'm not questioning it further. Magic Pokemon stuff. Chansey is back with its special item Lucky Punch, a spring-loaded boxing glove that hilariously extends the stubby little arms it has into full-blown fists and increases Chansey's critical hit ratio by 2 stages. I'll be real, the crit is just because it catches someone off guard. You could be standing 5 feet away from this Pokemon and you'd never expect it to be able to hit you, and before you know it, you're getting cold clocked by Chansey's Go-Go Gadget Extendo Nut Punch and you're down for the count. And it isn't even just one boxing glove, it's a pair of them. So this dude is coming out here like a character from ARMS. God, that game feels really old. I never played it, but I remember when Min Min was added to Smash, and I had to play around her ridiculous reach. Great reveal trailer for her, by the way. Also, that would be a fantastic name for Chansey. Min Min. Moving on. The Macho Brace has the weirdest name in direct translation, which is apparently Coercive Cast. I'm not even sure how to make a joke about that one without it being dismissed by the court. Wink wink. It doubles all effort values gained by the holder during a battle. It is an unobtainable held item in Generation 7 and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. The description states holding this stiff, heavy brace reduces a Pokemon's speed in battle, but allows its stats to grow more quickly. A different version of it is offered to Ash in the anime, and it's still just as confusing. Considering it's a brace, I'm assuming we have another anime thing going on where it's like a Rock Lee situation where it's just weighted bands that do restrict movement and add weight wherever it is attached. It would make sense considering this item is also associated with Machamp, so it would of course be a way to build muscle. But it of course goes beyond that and into the effort values, the points that determine if your Pokemon is a tank, a glass cannon, a speedy special attack sweeper, and whatever else the categories like to be named in competitive Pokemon. Metal and Quick Powder, items specifically only for Ditto. Originally they affected Ditto after transformation, but not anymore. Instead, the Metal Powder doubles Ditto's defense when not transformed, and the Quick Powder of course doubles the speed stat when not transformed. I get why it no longer works while transformed, since that could be absolutely broken, but come on. Ditto could use the love ever since it seems like the metal item that likely would have been used to evolve it into what is its scrapped beta form has been pulverized into these powders. Also have no idea what you would have done with an evolved Ditto, make it so it has the secondary type as Steel when it evolves, and it maybe could have a percentile boost to all of its stats as it transforms into whatever Pokemon it chooses. It gets a bit complicated and would be pretty rough for balancing game mechanics. Alternatively, since it does have to waste a turn transforming into the enemy Pokemon, these items kind of make sense. Help it survive one turn by transforming faster, or by being thick enough to take a hit that comes its way. The problem is that it will still have to tank at least one hit, if not two, before it attacks, which it is not doing, since it will likely be speed tying with a Pokemon it transforms into. Real rough situation for it. Both of these powders are noted to be extremely fine, yet hard, which again just makes it sound like sand, rocks, or metal that's just been powdered. Nothing special. Editing Krillik here, the powders might be made from regular and shiny Ditto because the colors do match. And then of course the only way to get these powders naturally is by catching a Ditto holding it, so do they just shed this powder? Or Ditto some sort of Warhammer org spreading spores all over the place to make more of themselves? With every detail I figure out about them, I only find myself with two more questions. It's like the Hydra of mysteries. The Mirror Herb is more aptly directly translated as the Imitation Herb. Just after an opponent has a stat increase, the holder consumes the Mirror Herb and gets the same stat increase. If multiple stats of the opponent are increased in a single move, for instance by using Clangorous Soul while holding a Throat Spray, all of these stat increases are copied. Outside of battle, a Pokemon that holds a Mirror Herb and has an empty move slot, and another Pokemon that knows a move the first Pokemon can learn as an egg move, after the picnic, the first Pokemon will learn that egg move, even if there is no matching egg group or if both Pokemon are of the same gender. This in turn does not consume the Mirror Herb. At first, this herb also irritated me design-wise because it isn't perfectly symmetrical, but then I realized that's literally the point. One side is imitating the other rather than being a perfect copy of the other side, as you would expect of a symmetrical leaf. This is a Paldea introduced item and has no natural way to encounter it, so we're left in the dark for any deeper lore for now. The Power Anklet, Band, Belt, Bracer, Lens, and Weight are once again very similar to that Rock Lee analogy I made earlier, though each of them serve different purposes categorized as power items. They award a Pokemon additional specific EVs whenever the Pokemon would normally earn effort values in battle, but halves speed of the Pokemon while it holds the item. Anklet for speed, Band for special defense, Belts for defense, Bracer for attack, Lens for special attack, and Weight for HP. There are what seems like eyes on the lens, so the Pokemon might literally look through it like goggles, giving them tunnel vision to focus their special attacks to a more focused area. The rest are fairly self-explanatory, I think. Quick Claw gives the holder a 20% chance of going first in its priority bracket, regardless of Trick Room, and Stall. If a Quick Claw is gained, lost, or suppressed, then it will not affect turn order until the beginning of the next turn. It is described as a light, sharp claw held by Sneasel, Sandshrew, and Sandslash, Meowth, Persian, and Zangoose. I would say they're all cats, but, Sandshrew's little duo there are a little glaring problem with that idea, and yes, Sneasel and Weavile are both cats and weasels as far as Pokemon is concerned, thanks to this little promotional art that they have. This item, though, is called the Head Start Claw or the Teacher's Claw in direct translation, which explains why it can be received as a gift from the teacher of the trainer's school in Hoenn. It also then separates it a bit from the idea of the quick, the soft vascular core inside of a claw or nail. That contains blood vessels and nerve endings, so cutting it does cause pain or can cause pain, bleeding, and discomfort for the animal. Though, it could also just be a pun for all of these things, which wouldn't surprise me at all and is fairly clever. The three lenses, Scope, Wide, and Zoom, each have a different function. The Scope or Focus Point lens gives the holder a one-stage critical hit ratio boost. Basically, it's a scope that looks for weak spots in the enemy, Go-Go Nanami ability. It even looks like wide circle glasses in Rescue Team DX to bring that idea together. Then we have the Wide Lens, boosting accuracy by 10%, as it serves as a magnifying glass, no different than just making the target clearer for the Pokemon who could use a little help and stop missing with Focus Blast. Meanwhile, the Zoom Lens looks like a temperature checker, but it boosts accuracy of the holder by 20% against targets that have already used a move in the same turn, making it more useful for a Pokemon that is slower in battle. I'm not 100% honestly sure how to spin that last one in explanation, because if they're using a physical attack, you can't really zoom in much unless you're going to stare at their elbow and be like, oh yes, that's a good elbow right there. They twisted approximately 7 degrees counterclockwise during the windup of their attack, giving me a perfect opportunity to ensure that I can strike them right in the pancreas. Like, I don't know what to do there. You know what? I'm just going to go with that, and I'm moving on because I don't want to waste time with boring explanations. You are definitely smart enough to figure out on your own. The Shell Bell. When the holder deals damage with its moves, its HP is restored by 1/8 of the damage dealt, even if it only hits a Pokemon's substitute. It seems as though they are made through the use of Shoal Salts and Shoal Shells, as you can exchange 4 each to make 1. This is simply salts from the Shoal Cave, and of course the Shoal Shells, god, I'm saying it too much, are literally just seashells found here too, noted to be very pretty. The salt is effectively part of a cleaning and preservation process to get rid of living tissue, grime, incrustations, and you'd want to use a different process to preserve the colors, I believe, as salt would likely just eat away at the colors. In other words, this is literally shells, arts, and crafts together to make a bell. I assume it doesn't have a bearing inside of it, as that would ruin the shell, and instead you can gently tap the bells to each other, and the space inside would create a ringing of its own. Something pleasant, then explaining why attacking would heal the user. Create an impact for a pleasant sound, which would be funny then to hear the chime of the shell bell rather than hearing the ear-splitting hyper beam on impact. Sticky Barb damages the holder by 12.5% of its maximum HP at the end of each turn. If a Pokemon with no held item hits a Pokemon holding a Sticky Barb with a contact move, including knockoff, the Sticky Barb will transfer to the Pokemon that used the move, even if the original holder has the Sticky Hold ability. If the transfer target has a substitute, Sticky Barb will not transfer. This is nothing more than a burdock seed, for example, and while Ferroseed does carry these as a great example of that with its own spiky body, Cacnea and Cacturne also have a chance of holding these to represent the spines of a cactus. You can also fish them up at Pony Island, which I assume then that these are supposed to also represent sea urchins. Gets a little weird, but it is in Balamere Lake as a hidden item, not specifically for fishing, so it's possible. Nothing crazy though, it's an item that sticks to you and hurts you if you touch it even by accident. Cubone and Marowak have their specialty item known as the Thick Club, which is of course just a thick bone that doubles their attack stat. You handed them a quality bone to beat opponents with. Great job. The game doesn't say where the bone comes from, or rather what it comes from, but every location you can get this bone from either already has a Cubone or Marowak in it, or it has Pokemon that would be able to go out into the area and hunt them down for a meal. Otherwise, ever since Generation 2, you've always had the chance of finding the Thick Club on one of these Pokemon. What's interesting though is that it is an automatic drop if you fight a wild Alpha Cubone, Marowak, or Alolan Marowak. So it once again makes me wonder if there were larger Pokemon in the past. Of course, we could always get into the Kangashkin theory, then tying that this bone would have been from one of them, but I'm not sure I want to do all that tying of all of that here, and I'm ready to move on. The finale for this section as our 47th entry. Oh, I have so many to go through. Not even marking the halfway point, please send help, is the White Herb. This does go back to what I said earlier about White Incense, cleansing the body, mind, and spirit. If the stat stages of any of the holder stats are negative, it consumes the White Herb, and all negative stat stages are reset to be neutral once per battle. Okay, now, traditionally you're supposed to burn that, not eat it, but whatever, if it works, it works. The first Pokemon we ever see this with is Flannery's Torkoal in a rematch if you don't count the Battle Tower, of course. But this is because it will use Overheat, which lowers special attack stats by 2 stages. But with some Sunny Day to boost the power and a White Herb to restore the stat loss immediately, that Torkoal is ready to bust a move again. There's a couple random places where you can get it, see Mauville being the most interesting since that's got a whole air of real-life horror to it, and a bit of cleansing would be great for the place if it wasn't already sunk into the water, but that's also for the best. That place is arguably one of the worst places in all of Pokemon history. You can, though, if you want to know about it, check out my second Hidden Tragedies video for that if you want more on it. Onto a much shorter category I called Effects Wild Encounters, because really that's the only true use of these items. Beginning with the Cleanse tag, this will work in the same way that the Pure Incense did, as a leading Pokemon holding this will repel wild encounters by 1/3, which of course we really don't have wild encounters anymore, so it doesn't do anything, but this item is very important because it helps us explain another item later on. It is, in literal translation, a Purification Ofuda. An Ofuda is a sacred Shinto or Buddhist talisman or amulet, typically made of paper, wood, or cloth. These need to stay clean and be placed at shrines to help keep the place safe from evil spirits. I guarantee if you're an anime nerd, you've seen these time and time again. Each Ofuda had their own purpose, their own effect, their own location that they should be placed on, such as doorways or gates, places that people will naturally pass through to be affected by these items and cleansed. Though if one of these were to be corrupted due to an incredibly powerful spiritual presence, well, we might have a problem on our hands, but we'll talk about that problem later. Our only other item in this section is the Smoke Ball, which does exactly what you think it does. It allows the holder to flee from any wild Pokemon encounter without fail as they slam this orb onto the ground, and a violent burst of smoke releases all at once, making for an easy escape tactic. This next category is something I call move-based. The entire idea of these objects existing in the first place is to be used with a move, to avoid a type of move, to enhance a move, you name it. We begin with the Air Balloon, which is literally just a regular balloon that gives the status of ungrounded to a Pokemon holding it. It means that the holder is immune to damaging ground-type moves and several related effects. If the holder or its substitute is hit by a damaging move, even if it has a disguise, the Air Balloon is destroyed and your Pokemon will be back on the ground again. There is a note on Bulbapedia saying that if gravity is in effect, then you do not get the benefits of Air Balloon, which is a little funny to me. Like, I get it. The point of using gravity is to make all gravity stronger, so I'm in. Another interesting note is that it does not burst while Magic Room is in effect, if the holder has the ability Klutz or is under the effect of embargo, so do with that information what you will. Lastly, there is only one way to get it from a Pokemon in the wild, with a 1% chance of finding a Drift Blim carrying it while in the dark grass of Pokemon Black 2, White 2, which is such low odds, but who else would hold a balloon other than the balloon Pokemon? If a Pokemon holding a big root, or root as normal people would probably say it, uses a draining move, or strength sap, it restores 30% more HP than it would otherwise do. Additionally, a Pokemon holding a big root regains 30% more HP from Leech Seed, Ingrain, and Aqua Ring. Side note, it is technically a different factor, which puts it at 29.98%, which is going to be the same for a lot of these items, which as far as math is concerned, for percentiles, that is just 30%. It's kind of the same as saying like 0.9 repeating is just 1, which it is, I hope. Please, dear God, I hope I'm not wrong by the standards of math rules. Otherwise, my Calculus 2 professor might track me down. Now, with Big Roots, you also take more damage from a Pokemon like Tentacool, who has Liquid Ooze as an ability, because of course, absorbing toxins into your body is a bad idea. This can be found on Diglett because they eat roots as moles do, and it can also be found with a rarity of 5% with Lileep and Cradily, which is of course because they anchor themselves to rocks on the seabed in order to stay in place or hunt while also being revived from root fossils. The reason this item works this way is of course because it is literally a big root. The deeper your roots go and the deeper they are, the more water and nutrients you absorb. This also prevents other plants in the area from doing the same and can even lower the water table just enough to make sure you outcompete other plants with similar or smaller roots. The Binding Band causes binding moves, such as, bind or constrict, used by the holder to inflict binding that deals damage equal to 1/6 rather than 1/8 of the target's maximum HP at the end of each turn. That sounds confusing, so use a binding move and it does 1/6 instead of 1/8 damage each turn as the bind effect takes hold. It really is just a band that has been twisted up to make it look like you can trap a leg or arm in one part and then have it also wrapped around another object, binding it as it has already been twisted, and any movement will cause it to tighten further. The Blunder Policy's direct translation name is so much better. It is called Misinsurance. Like, those have vastly different underlying connotations. On one hand, it's like, hey, if you absolutely mess this up, the government says you get a second chance. On the other hand, it says, I'm such an absolute f*** up that I got myself some insurance. If one of the holder's moves misses one of its targets because of an accuracy or evasion check, the Blunder Policy is consumed and the holder's speed is increased by 2 stages. This only works if it counts as an evasion or accuracy check failure, not if the opponent does something like use Protect or if you fail a one-hit KO move, just for note. The first time it is obtained is at the Battle Tower, so it legitimately may just be a thing the Pokemon organizations have handed out. In fact, Chairman Rose may have been the one to make this since he owned it as Rose Tower before it got transferred over to Leon, which that makes it even more believable that Big Corpo Man would make an insurance policy for Pokemon battles. One-time use gems in the Pokemon world are very interesting. They were introduced and left behind in Unova with the exception that a fairy gem was still created for use in Kalos, yet still not obtainable. They're still in the code as of Scarlet and Violet, so maybe one day they'll return. They are again though one-time use items that will not be consumed if your attack misses or fails, boosting the attack power by 50%, which just makes it sound like a Paladin Smite, which, God, do I love smiting as a Paladin. As a brief side, been enjoying Baldur's Gate 3 with friends for months now, in the last act, or rather final act now, and it feels great, dealing over like 100 damage in a turn if I do it right as a straight Paladin with some Illithid power help here and there. But back on track, these gems are incredibly valuable, having been seen in the anime, but otherwise there's not a lot going on with them. They are rare, so it makes you wonder if there's a special story behind them, if they're connected to another Pokemon, or they're concentrated Pokemon energy that randomly forms, or something else entirely. We're not really sure. Genesect Drives only change the typing of its signature move, Technoblast, when they are attached to Genesect. The attack is only a normal type move until one of the 4 drives are inserted: Douse for water, Shock for electric, Burn for fire, and Chill for ice. Scientist Dudley is given the credit for specifically creating Genesect and its drives as he worked for Team Plasma, going against N's wishes to shut down the project. What's even stranger is that there are a slew of characters who have their hands on the drives and are intermingled within this criminal plot. Originally, you get the drives from Dudley, but in Pokemon X and Y, the drives can be obtained by showing Genesect to a hiker at the Fossil Lab in Ambret Town. He says that he received the plans for the drives from an acquaintance of his in Unova and made the drives from them himself. In Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, the drives can be obtained by showing Genesect to a street thug on the 2nd floor of Mauville City. He claims that they are rare items that came from the Unova region through some shady market. In Pokemon Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun Ultra Moon, The drives can be obtained by talking to Colress on Route 8 after becoming champion. He mentions that they were created by scientists in the P2 laboratory. And some random dude in the bargain shop has them in Galar, and then we're back to complete 100% shadiness by buying them for Mega Shards from a businessman in a back alley that really encourages us buying them. Each person who has their hands on these drives are definitely not 100% on the positive side of society or the law potentially, which is not surprising because Team Plasma and a number of our other evil organizations had their tendrils deep in the regions that they belong to before they revealed themselves. Many only started acting out as obviously as they did once they had no choice but to start making their big final moves. So as long as we can get Genesect in any region or game, we'll keep obtaining these drives from people who might just be ex-Team Plasma members. When holding the cell battery, if you're hit by an electric type damaging move, the battery is consumed and your attack is increased by 1 stage. It's like having a rechargeable battery is all. You've been recharged with energy and are ready to blast away at your opponents with a bit more juice. Plusle, Minun, Emolga, Alolan Geodude, and Graveler, and Charjabug all can be found carrying this item in the wild. Plusle and Minun because they are the positive and negative current. Emolga, just because it can, I guess. The Alolan Geodude line as they build up electricity in their body from the specific rocks they eat, and then Charjabug is literally representative of and is used as a battery by Vikavolt. So all these make clear sense, minus Emolga for whatever reason that I can't figure out. I even looked at Ellis's team, or Elisa's team, to try and figure out and see if her Emolga had one, but nope, nothing. Moving on. Actually, I think I just realized I put a different item in the wrong category. I'm not fixing that in editing. Onto the Choice Band, Choice Scarf, and Choice Specs, which all force your Pokemon to use only one move for as long as it is on the field, until it is switched out, but they all provide different benefits. The Band sets you up like Karate Kid and gives you a 50% boost to your attack stat. The Scarf sets you up like Speed of Sound Sonic and you get a 50% boost to speed. And the Specs lets you cosplay as a Team Flare member as it boosts special attack by 50%. I also love that they're directly translated as Fixation instead of Choice for their name. Like, can someone please pull off the fixation glasses from my face? They've been glued for nearly 3 years talking about Pokemon. I'm joking, don't do that. Instead, let more people know I'm marginally insane and have great deep dive videos to help the channel grow. It'd be great. Now, I was looking at any other references Bulbapedia might have, and in a section labeled merchandise, it says the Choice Scarf has been featured in several officially licensed merchandise. I see the Arcanine held item pin, the literal Choice Scarf, and then a Dracovish plush by itself. Like, my brain didn't immediately read the captions, so I just thought the plush was accidentally thrown in there for no reason, and I just laughed so hard. But the scarf was included with the plush, of course. Pokemon holding a Covert Cloak are unaffected by the additional effects of other Pokemon's damaging moves, including additional effects provided by Poison Touch, Toxic Chain, Stench, King's Rock, and Razor Fang. For example, a Pokemon holding a Covert Cloak cannot be burned by Flamethrower or made to flinch by Fake Out. It is noted to be a hooded cloak that conceals the holder, tricking the eyes of its enemies and protecting it from the additional effects of moves. This easily makes it the classic anime moment all over again, where somebody blasts a suspicious character in a cloak, only for them to throw the cloak off dramatically and reveal who they are. The impact still hitting, but the flames not on them. I'm also like 99% sure someone did this in the Pokemon Adventures manga. I really need to read more of that. Up next are the Eject button and the Eject pack. If the holder is hit by a damaging move and does not faint, it consumes the Eject button and is immediately switched out for a Pokemon of its trainer's choice. Meanwhile, the Eject pack does the same thing if the stats of the Pokemon holding it are lowered. These are just your emergency exit buttons. Press the Eject button because you're hurt, use the pack because you need emergency supplies to restore your stats. This does not apply to status conditions, by the way, but if your Pokemon does use something like Overheat, then it lowers your Pokemon's special attack, then you get that quick switch out. Pretty baller on a fast moving Pokemon needing to stay alive after a big hit. Also, the Eject pack makes me think of Clement's backpack, even though it's a Galar introduced item. They're pretty similar, you have to admit, and he had a ton of inventions in that infinite bag of his for some good get out of jail free opportunities. The Expert Belt boosts your super effective moves by 20%. It is a well-worn belt in description, which as a black belt goes beyond mastery in that case. To obtain a black belt in the first place is already a grand feat, but for it to be well worn on top of that really shows just how much more training or fighting the user has gone through. You know, if we get to some stupid number of members every month, I might be able to start doing bigger videos, like having my butt kicked by a martial artist that would represent each of the fighting styles in Pokemon. That would be pretty baller, alongside being able to donate any excess money to wildlife sanctuaries that need it. Just some ideas that I'm letting out of my mind right now for when the channel really grows into something much larger like I would like it to. The Grip Claw makes the effective moves like Bind or Wrap last longer, literally aiding in the grip of the Pokemon on their prey. As you would expect, Sneasel is the main way to get your hands on this regularly, and they have a 50% chance of holding them in any game they appear in, with Sandshrew and Sandslash at a 5% chance in some games. Barbaracle only in Ultra Space Wilds for some wild reason. I mean, I guess it's all hands, so I shouldn't be surprised. And the Claw kind of makes me a little uncomfortable, honestly, because it just looks like a claw that grew too long and hasn't been ground down or clipped in a long time. Like a little corkscrew nail, and I'm just not here for it. Ultimately though, this is literally just an item for another tactic in trapping prey. Light Clay allows a move used by the Pokemon holding it, such as Light Screen, Reflect, and Aurora Veil, to last a total of 8 turns instead of 5 turns. It seems as though the clay extends the reflective surface of the wall being made by the Pokemon, and what I love about it is that you can obtain this item from clay environments or Pokemon related to clay. For example, the Golett and Baltoy duos naturally carry this item since they're made of clay, and then the Mudbray duo chew up the ground to make clay easier to find. So of course they would also have the chance of carrying this item with them. Now, what it's composed of is that it could be a mixture of iron-rich minerals alongside magnesium, calcium, and potassium, which give it this color. As for its reflective properties, it's clay. That stuff gets pretty shiny with all the water it's able to absorb. The Loaded Dice causes multi-strike moves to always hit at least 4 times at minimum if the move allows it. So Triple Kick would always hit 3 times if it hits the first time. Pin Missile will always hit 4 times if it passes the first check, but might hit a 5th time, and the Population Bomb can hit 4 to 10 times. These are cheating dice, of course, weighted so that way the side with a 3 is heavier, making it so that way it lands on a 4. Although not quite like real cheating dice, since there's always the chance of it going higher, but I think you catch my drift. Luminous Moss works like the Cell Battery, but when hit by a water-type damaging move, it is consumed and the special defense is raised by 1 stage instead. It's literally just a bundle of bioluminescent moss that we can gather from mossy rocks and wild Corsola, meaning it's just growing on those adorable little coral Pokemon. The Metronome is a move that boosts the power of a move by 20% for each time the move is used in a row in battle. It increases each time the move hits successfully in a row upwards to a maximum of 100%. But if unsuccessful, you change moves or switch out, the bonus goes back to 0% on the first use of the attack. You have to actively choose to use the move as well, so Rollout does not have this bonus applied to it, as you use the move once and you're locked in for multiple turns as part of the single use of the move. Although, if your move charges on turn 1 and attacks on turn 2, it is considered a success and you get a 20% boost, meaning Solar Beam would get this little 20% bump. So, if you can manage to use a move on a sweeper Pokemon for 6 turns, don't know why I held up 2, in a row, then you get a 100% boost to the power of the move. And that sounds really stupid and really fun to me. Now, of course, this is a literal metronome that we would find in music, and who else would be found in the wild with this than the line inspired by music and maestros, Kricketot, and Kricketune. More than this, Chatot can also be found with it, all of them keeping in time with music in the first place. Also, Technician, Bug Bite, Stab, Metronome, Kricketune could then take a 60 base power move, apply Technician first to 90, Stab for 135, and if it hits 5 turns in a row, then the base damage should be 270, I believe. Am I thinking about this correctly? Oh god, throw on Terrestrialization on there as well, since that's free. And the stab turns into a 2x multiplier instead of 1.5. And then I think we get 180 that can transform into 360 thanks to the Metronome. Someone tell me if I'm correct on that. I haven't delved into moves yet, but now I'm incredibly tempted to figure out like ridiculous combos to turn weak moves into powerful ones, or figure out the most powerful moves possible overall for each type. It just sounds like fun. There's no shortage of bands to wear on your head in Pokemon, as we have another one in the form of the Muscle Band. This item raises the power of physical moves by 10%. It's a lower percent than others, but it covers all physical moves, which is a nice small boost to everything. It has red markings on it that remind me of what we see when a Pokemon goes berserk, whether that be out of anger because it's an alpha Pokemon or otherwise, which we do get to see many Pokemon who undergo this rage experience much higher levels of strength, physical or otherwise. It also makes me wonder just how deep the culture of headbands go into Japan. Not whatever anime wants to feed me, but like the actual significance. With Power Herb, if the holder uses a move that has a charging turn except Skydrop, immediately after charging the move, the user consumes the herb and executes the final stage of the move on turn 1. Because the charging stage is still performed then, the defense boost from Skull Bash and the special attack boost from Meteor Beam and Electro Shot are still applied. Apparently, the Totem Lurantis was using a Power Herb in training in the anime, as it was just throwing out his Solar Blade without needing to charge, and that's pretty dope. Imagine a Pokemon that just has an entire clump of Power Herbs that it's chewing on, and is throwing out charge moves every second without fail. We can't do that in the games because balancing and mechanics, but at least in any other medium, there's an opportunity for some terrifying fun. Protective pads, of course, protect the holder from effects caused by using moves that make contact with the target. If the holder makes contact with a Pokemon with Perish Body, another Pokemon will be affected by it. Compare this to a number of different things, from training gloves and boxing that are used to help train someone in their strikes, or even just protective pads for yourself when you are striking a punching bag. They are clearly gloves at the end of the day and serve their purpose. The ring target allows the holder to lose its type immunities to attacking moves. This does not affect other type-based immunities, such as Grass-type Pokemon being immune to Powder and Spore moves, but does make Ground-type Pokemon vulnerable to Thunder Wave. Flying-type Pokemon become vulnerable to Ground-type moves, but are otherwise considered ungrounded. This can be seen as literally painting a target on your back. But this is something that would work well with moves that give your item to the other Pokemon, those that try to swap items, so on and so forth. An interesting detail is that you first find it in Pokemon Black and White, and there's sequels only within Opelucid City, a place that is often given two different designs based on which game you play, while the ring itself is black and white. With Rocky Helmets, if a Pokemon uses a move that makes contact with the holder of this item, the attacker takes damage equal to 1/6 of its maximum HP. Each individual strike from a multi-strike move that makes contact will activate the Rocky Helmet. This is arguably another one of my favorite items because it is a walking OSHA violation. Literally a helmet that has a number of rocks embedded in it, from whatever reason you can think of accident-wise, compromising the entire helmet, yet adding a level of offense for the holder. It's also the helmet you see miners wear in the games to bring it all together. The Snowball is just like the Luminous Moss, but if the holder is hit by an Ice-type damaging move, it consumes the Snowball, and its attack is increased by 1 stage. All you've done is add more ammo to the pile, so the defender can hit back harder with what they claim is a Snowball, but you know there's a chunk of ice hidden in there now. After the Pokemon holding the Throat Spray uses a sound-based move, it consumes the item, and its special attack is raised by 1 stage. Throat Spray is not used if the move fails or finishes the battle. I'm a little sad there isn't a good shop in Pierce's City, because this would have been the perfect way to get this item. Instead, we first see it given to us from a boy who we help find his lost Minccino, which I suppose if you're yelling really loudly for a very long time trying to get your pet back, Throat Spray would help. Except, it's usually just going to numb the throat, not heal it. With the exception of this item specifically, I assume since it does look like a potion for Pokemon fit with a spray nozzle. A different kind, I guess. Similar to the Blunder Policy, if your Pokemon holding Weakness Policy is hit by a super effective move, it consumes the Weakness Policy item, and its attack and special attack are increased by 2 stages each, though if they have contrary, these stats instead lower. Once again, this is actually called Weakness Insurance, but the first time we see it is in the Battle Mason of X, Y, and Oris, these places being built and owned by the Mason sisters. Really interesting then to see once again these insurance claims being brought in as items within competitive battle zones of their world, but nothing special to otherwise note here. The Wise Glasses boost the power of the holder's special moves by 10%, noted to be a thick pair of glasses overall. They're just your typical stereotype of glasses, making someone look smarter while giving them a nice little boost to all their special moves. You can even get them from the trainer's school in Alola, really driving home that these are nerd glasses. The last item of this section is the Z Crystal, an item that does depend on the type of move that you're using for it to be brought to its full potential. These are items that have broken off from Ultra Necrozma as it fell into its corrupted form, parts of its body scattering throughout Ultra space, and of course also landing in Alola. These prisms refracting light are incredibly interesting because they are the catalyst for power between a trainer and the Pokemon that they've properly bonded with. Because at least in lore, you can't use these without the Z-Ring or without a proper bond with your Pokemon. I'm also 99% sure that at least in unofficial lore, the dances you do before activating a Z move are entirely up to you. They just have to fully express and create the connection between you and your Pokemon in order to succeed. In other words, you can absolutely go wild with a dance for you and your Pokemon in a unique way. So, go wild out there, fanfic writers and artists. These crystals not only come in one of every flavor to match Pokemon types like Fire or Ghost, but there are even crystals that are specifically only for Pokemon such as Snorlax and its move of Perfection, Pulverizing Pancake. Or, of course, the absolutely devastating powers of the Z move Guardian of Alola from the Tapus and the ultimate move of them all, Light That Burns the Sky. These are overwhelmingly powerful moves that take an incredible amount of energy, leaving the trainer and Pokemon tired lore-wise after using them, and actually we get to see that after Light That Burns the Sky. And even more interesting is that if Arceus holds a Z Crystal, its type changes, but its signature move, Judgment, does not change typing. One of these days, I'll just have to commit an entire video just to Z Crystals, their lore, locations, the specific moves, who holds them, so on and so forth. It would be really fun to do. On to our next category, items that are related to weather or terrain. These are considered separate effects within a battle, but I wanted to pair them up here for ease. The first of which keeps us in Alola with each of our 4 seeds that are found there. We have the Electric, Grassy, Misty, and Psychic seed, each of them being consumed when their corresponding terrain becomes active. So for example, if your Pokemon holds a Misty seed and the terrain becomes Misty, it consumes the seed and its special defense is raised by 1 stage. I have no intention of going through all the different terrain effects, just know it's one of my favorites because anything that creates a domain is sick. Any anime that has ever done a Jujutsu Kaisen domain before that series even existed, and the whole concept of it within that anime is dope, at least in the idea of this. And of course, I love it within Pokemon despite hardly using it. Maybe a video only on terrains with the angle of it being a Pokemon's domain video would be fun to do one day. Back to our seeds though, the Electric and Grassy seeds boost defense, while Psychic and Misty boost special defense. These seeds also align nearly perfectly with not only all 4 Oricorio, but also all 4 of the Tapus. The only exception is if we look at Tapu Bulu with its grass typing and Bile style Oricorio, my personal favorite, who is instead a fire type Pokemon. Though as part of this fire typing, it would still thematically match the anger and passion that Tapu Bulu has for nature and its guardianship over it upon its island. Another detail is that these seeds are commonly held by a singular Pokemon that correspond with their type as well, with a 5% chance of being found in Alola with them. Togedemaru for Electric, Comfy for Misty, Bounsweet for Grassy, and Execute for Psychic. This doesn't mean that they're eating the seeds as their primary source of food in their diet, or even they may not be eating them at all, but they might at least be carriers or do find them interesting. Up next, I have clumped the damp, heat, icy, and smooth rocks together, each of them allowing their respective weather effects to last 8 turns instead of 5 turns. This would be Rain, Harsh Sunlight, Hail or Snow, and Sandstorm in that respective order. More than this though, at least in Pokopia, we do see that these rocks do literally have the ability to change the environment on their own. You actively bring a smooth rock to an Onyx to make its habitat drier, while you can bring a heat rock over to a Torchic to make its habitat warmer. These aren't massive ranges of change in terms of area, but they are still effective enough that there are Pokemon that do benefit from them outside of battle. So I guess there are some of your Pokemon's preferred rock in their play space, and they'll be really happy with you whenever they want to seek comfort, like a lizard with a sun lamp. Heavy-duty boots are exactly as they sound, allowing the holder to be unaffected by entry hazards such as spikes and sticky web. They're literally just thick-soled shoes that take the brunt of the impact without any fear of the Pokemon wearing them. You first get them in the Galar Mine, showing that they are another standard for mining attire as you might have expected. I used to wear steel-toed shoes all the time when I was younger and would run like miles in them. Never again would I ever do that because it's not good to wear shoes like that constantly for everything you do, but I was still running pretty well in them. But then I learned they were really loud, which was a little embarrassing. I hope you ordered room service because that's our next item. If the move Trick Room is used while a Pokemon is holding room service, the room service is consumed, causing the holder's speed to drop by 1 stage. Additionally, room service will also be consumed if a Pokemon holding it switches in while Trick Room is already in effect, similar to Electric Seed and the other terrain seeds. Once again, a Battle Tower introduced item, and I love it. It's almost like a Hitman prepared for action. The cart and Metal Cloche, or Cloche, not sure how to say it, just being a ploy, as they were prepared for you to use Trick Room all along. A double trick, if you would, now allowing them to move faster thanks to their speed lowering, and then Trick Room allowing them to move faster thanks to their lower speed. It sounds convoluted, but it's still really fun in concept. The safety goggles grants immunity to powder and spore moves and to damage from hail and sandstorm. It also blocks the activation of the ability Effect Spore. Literally anything that would go into your eyes, you are now protected from. I also love these goggles because they are directly designed after Flygon's colors and goggles as well, giving me yet another reason to always call my Flygon Goggles. You do also get to see Ash and Charjabug wear these in a race within a desert segment to of course prevent them from being blinded by the sandstorm there, which I like because it shows that Pokemon don't always overcome their natural habitat boundaries, needing some of that extra protection to keep them safe and happy. The Terrain Extender, or Ground Coat as it's directly translated to, extends the number of turns that terrains last into 8 instead of 5, as always, through the moves and abilities that activate the terrain. There's no greater significance to this, but it is noted to be sprayed over a wide area. It would then likely be a mister rather than any sort of like spray paint that you could create a boundary line with. The last of this category, the Utility Umbrella, a sturdy umbrella that protects the holder from the effects of rain and harsh sunlight, though it does not protect you from sandstorm, hail, and snow. This also means that if you activate sunlight and use Solar Beam, it will still take 2 turns for the holder of the umbrella to fire it. This logic would continue to any other moves and Cherrim's different forms. We're first introduced to this in Galar, a pretty fitting place considering all the different weather patterns, and especially since Galar is inspired by the UK, which has a reputation for being consistently rainy, even though they don't even come close to being the rainiest location in the world. Just got those rainy vibes. And actually, short tangent, this little Gengar right here is the specific Gengar that my fiance got me about 2 or 3 months into us dating, because she went on a trip with her father to Europe. She didn't know its name. She only knew about, I don't know, a month into us dating that I actually liked Pokemon, and hardly even had 2,000 subscribers on YouTube at the time, if I remember correctly. Maybe I had like 8,000. I don't remember at this point. It was when I was small, right? Before I could even make YouTube a part-time, right? She understood basically none of it, and sometimes I like to tease her because she is older by only 2 to 3 years and yet still doesn't understand anything regarding it. But despite all that, she still comes back to the US after her trip, and this Gengar plush was one of the things that she brought back for me, calling it, as she could not remember what its name was, Purple Monster Guy. And it's through this whole idea of her being the person who doesn't understand but still puts that effort in and shows that she believes in me and listens to her actions, that I find myself knowing that she is the one. She is god-awful with words, let me tell you. Sometimes a little awful with, like, expressing those positive, more romantic emotions. Terrible with finding the right words or finding the right way to ask questions sometimes about all this. But her actions show her care above all. But enough of me being sappy, a sappy man. I don't think I've ever talked about that in a video, and it was like the perfect opportunity to. So let's move on to the next category now, shall we? A shorter list is the status effect category. These aren't necessarily strict status effects, more like volatile and non-volatile statuses. So for example, poisoned is non-volatile, while confusion is volatile. Their moniker dependent on if they go away or not in battle on their own. So as a tip, if you get hit with confusion, you can still use a cure-all status item and it makes it go away. Most people don't know this, and I loved watching my opponents in randomized Nuzlocke use Swagger, only for me to enjoy the free boost to attack from it as I gave my Pokemon a little spritz. In this case though, we have Destiny Knot. If the holder becomes infatuated, the Pokemon that the holder is in love with becomes infatuated as well. And this is another one of my favorite items, an unintentional follow-up to my Fiance story, as this item is exactly as it sounds. You tie one thread to your hand, often the pinky, and then to the pinky of the other person. The red string of fate, Unme no Akaito, is an ancient Japanese and East Asian legend stating that an invisible thread ties you to your soulmate or someone destined to play an important role in your life. They even used this in the Pokemon Adventures manga between Red and Yellow, and I just about broke down because, God, do I love the manga so much, and Yellow is easily my favorite character in Pokemon bar none. Red is a close second though, of course. And so of course then you can see why if one Pokemon becomes infatuated, so does the other Pokemon in that case. This is the red string of fate in full effect, the destiny knot that binds them together, and it's very cute. The Flame and Toxic Orb do exactly as they may sound, causing the holder to be inflicted with the burn or poison condition when being held. The Flame Orb, of course, is noted to be a bizarre orb that gives off heat when touched, and the Toxic Orb exudes toxins when touched. In addition, it will still not poison a Steel-type Pokemon unless they have the ability Corrosion. The Flame Orb is important for Pokemon who have Guts as an ability, allowing them to ignore the negative effect of a burn that lowers their physical attack, and instead they have their physical attack increase. Meanwhile, the classic Gliscor can hold the Toxic Orb and get its Drank on, restoring its HP from being poisoned rather than being harmed by it. That's also another idea. Every Pokemon with a secret third typing. I don't know how many there really are off the top of my head out there, but if there's even just 10, I could make a video on that lasting about 40 minutes long as a proper deep dive without stretching it. I also find it funny that you can cure your Pokemon from their status condition while they're holding these items, but then on the next turn, they're just going to be affected by it again since they're still holding the stupid orb. The Focus Band and the Focus Sash, if the Pokemon holding a Focus Band is hit by a damaging move that would cause it to faint, there is about a 12% chance the Focus Band will activate and cause its holder to survive with 1 HP. Meanwhile, for the Focus Sash, if the holder has full HP and takes damage from a move that would knock it out in one hit, it will endure the hit with 1 HP. It disappears for the duration of the battle after a single use. These are both directly translated as the Fighting Spirit Band and Fighting Spirit Sash. They're the headbands tied around the head before a character goes all out, the tightening of the headband before going all anime and getting a second wind to fight with all your might until you drop. The tightening of these pieces of cloth, or when the hype music kicks in at Season 3's finale using a remix of Season 1's original opening music, and that's exactly what I personally envision whenever these items' effects pop, and it's glorious. Last of the items here is the Mental Herb. If the holder is infatuated or affected by Taunt, Encore, Torment, Heal Block, or Disable, including from Cursed Body, it consumes the Mental Herb and is cured of all these effects. Interesting that it doesn't heal all effects that are volatile, like Confusion, though there's other items for that anyway. It does make me wonder if these are similar to mints or smelling salts, something sharp, since all of these effects seem to be a blockage of part of the mind rather than a full disabling of the mind like we do see in Confusion. The sharpness of the taste or smell, or even both, upon chewing, then bring the person back to their senses. Our next category isn't a traditional category by Bulbapedia or Cerebi standards, but I'm putting these items here because they feel like they're a meta. Things that affect the trainer, or rather things that the trainer are able to track, like XP, affection, and money. Speaking of which, the first item in this category is the Amulet Coin. The Amulet Coin doubles the amount of prize money received after battle if the holder takes part in the battle. It also doubles the number of coins picked up from Payday, G-Max Gold Rush, and Make It Rain. This is actually noted as the Koban, the very same thing that Meowth has on its forehead, and the item that you would see in the real world with the Maneki Neko. The tale of the Maneki Neko is as follows. One stormy afternoon, a powerful feudal lord, or in some stories a powerful samurai, named Ri Naotaka, was caught in a violent thunderstorm while passing near the temple. Seeking shelter under a large leafy tree, he noticed a monk's cat standing at the temple gate, waving its paw as if beckoning him inside. Curious, the lord stepped away from the tree and approached the cat. Seconds later, a massive bolt of lightning struck the exact tree he had just been standing under. Having his life spared by the cat's gesture, the lord became a generous patron of the temple, bringing wealth and prosperity to the monk. Following the cat's death, the monk built an altar to honor the creature, leading to the creation of the classic cat statues with one raised paw. So of course then the Koban would be a symbol of this, and there are exorbitant amounts of coin that you can get in certain battles if you use it and other moves or items just right. But maybe that will be left to a video on making the strongest moves in Pokemon, because again, that sounds really fun. The experience share has changed so much throughout the years, technically no longer being a held item and being a key item instead that affects all your Pokemon instead. It would represent helmets that were said to be able to sense your brain waves, lighting up when it received energy in some form. Now, if it is enabled, the experience and EVs earned when an opposing Pokemon faints or is caught is awarded to all of the non-fainted Pokemon in the party individually. Pokemon that do not participate in battle gain only 50% of the possible experience. Any Pokemon eligible to receive experience, including level 100 Pokemon, receives all EVs from that event. Some people, I will say Pokemon has become too easy with stuff like this, and you know what I say? Have some whimsy. Take your risks. Don't just play optimal, because clearly you aren't having fun anymore if you're saying that. The whole point is to always have fun at the end of the day, after all. The Lucky Egg is literally an egg, as it can be sold to the Gourmet Maniac on Route 5 for 200 Pokédollars in Unova. But as for its effect, the holding Pokemon gains 150% of the experience it wouldn't otherwise gain. This effect stacks with other experience increasing effects, such as different original trainer Pokemon's naturally boosted experience gain. It does not affect experience gained from auto battles. It's described as being an egg filled with happiness, which then explains why it can be found on Wild Chansey. The eggs of Chansey are literally said to be so nutritious and so filled with happiness that those who eat its eggs and Blissey's eggs can't help but be happy and smile. You can also find it on the rest of this line alongside Wild Pepple. I'm just stumbling on my words as I'm getting closer to the end, and it hurts. But you can find them alongside or on Wild Pelipper in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, which then plays into the tale of the stork that delivers babies to expecting parents. I'm gonna drink some water. Alright, I originally made a video of this exact topic years ago when I hardly knew what I was doing, and you can even see the original thumbnail compared to the new one, which I'm very proud of. But I remember people in the comments saying, what about mail? And so I have included mail as a part of this. This was how you could have fun and send little written letters to your friends if you had any back then. I didn't, not that I played Pokemon, that is. You would trade a Pokemon carrying a piece of mail, it would have an adorable little card within it too, and that was really it at the end of the day, although many effects that would normally affect items held by Pokemon do not work on mail. For example, Tricky and Switcheroo fail, Thief, Covet, and Pickpocket can steal, but then the slots in the message are changed, being blank or taking on values previously used by mail given to a Pokemon in that party slot. Meaning, no matter what you do, you are not going to get that original piece of mail. The mail service in Pokemon is taken very seriously, and you don't want to know what legendary holds power over that. You wouldn't live to see the sun rise another day. I'm raising a red card on you, resulting in immediate ejection from your favorite sports ball game, which is literally what the red card item does. If the holder is hit by a damaging move and does not faint, it consumes the red card and forces the Pokemon that used the move, even if it was an ally, to switch to a random Pokemon. If held by a wild Pokemon in a single battle, it forces a player's Pokemon that attacks it to flee when activated. Seems like it would be a fantastic item if you wanted to get a Pokemon removed from the field that's gotten a few too many boosts, and you either have a Pokemon that can take a hit or fodder to sacrifice for the match. Sorry, my level 5 Badoo that I caught and never trained, you're about to become food for a great cause at least. You will be remembered in the Nuzlocke's championship credits. The Shed Shell allows the holder to switch out, but not flee or teleport, even if it is under the effect of a trapping move or ability. It is a tough, discarded carapace that is found on a number of Pokemon. Insects that have discarded their chrysalis in their transformation into moths or butterflies like Venomoth, Beautyfly, and Dustox. Then there's Scraggy, Scrafty, and Seviper, who have it because they do shed skin as reptiles. But then there's Goomy and Sliggoo, which the only explanation I have there is that they are still dragons, potentially shedding something. Otherwise, it must mean that their goo oh no, their goo doesn't need to harden. I'm wrong. I'm completely wrong in my script. I was going to say it hardened, and because like it dries out in the sun, they're literally just super slippery Pokemon. That's all that there is to it. So that explains why they haven't, and we can move on actually way faster. The final item of this category is the Soothe Bell. When held by a Pokemon, increases to that Pokemon's friendship are increased by 50%. It also works in tandem with the Luxury Ball and Met location bonuses, applying after those bonuses. It is noted to be a comforting chime that makes the holder calm and friendly towards the trainer. The first time we get it is from the Slateport City Pokemon Fan Club, only awarded if the lead Pokemon has at least 150 friendship. That's a bit past the middle line of friendship, with the maximum being 255, so it shows that you're on good terms with your Pokemon, but you could make them a lot happier, which is why you're given this bell. You've proven yourself to be a good trainer, but you could always be better as you continue to care for them. Our semi-final category is the type-based category. These are literally just items that when held by Pokemon that uses the corresponding type move or is of the right type, that then there are effects in place. So they are entirely type dependent, hence why these are in their own category. First up is the Black Belt, which would, of course, later become the Expert Belt in concept as we talked about earlier. This item would be for fighting types who have been able to master their craft, but are always able to take things further, nice and easy, as it gives them that 20% boost to all fighting type moves. If Black Sludge is held by a poison type Pokemon, the holder restores 1/16 of its maximum HP, rounded down but not less than 1, at the end of each turn. If currently held by a Pokemon that is not a poison type, the holder takes damage equal to 1/8 of its maximum HP, rounded down but not less than 1 at the end of each turn. Pokemon with the ability Magic Guard are immune to this damage. It is effectively a special leftovers just for poison type Pokemon, making it a better choice if you think it might get stolen away by opposing Pokemon. Black Sludge is also the leftover particles after water has been filtered and evaporated for cleaning at waste management facilities, resulting in this ichor being left behind. It can be burned for fuel, or it can be reapplied to soil as a fertilizer, both being fantastic options rather than letting it be a biohazard and wasting away somewhere. It actually reminds me of the days when I was aiming to do work related to black sludge at waste treatment facilities and other environmental stuff. Amazing things that I really fell in love with and would still love to do here and there if ever given the opportunity. Charcoal boosts the power of fire type moves by 20%. It is a fuel that's of course added to fire, so there's not a lot to say here. Although, charcoal is made through a process called pyrolysis, which involves heating wood or organic materials in a low oxygen environment. This removes water and volatile gases, leaving behind a lightweight carbon-rich residue that burns hotter, cleaner, and more efficiently than raw wood. Charcoal in the real world does have a number of adverse environmental impacts, but it really boils down to the idea that it wasn't meant to be used on such a massive scale as we have made it. There's a lot of gases emitted from it, it does take energy to create, and while it can be sustainable if done right, it's not meant for industrial means, to my understanding. It's perfect for small families, log cabin life, or just old living overall. old woodcutter families. And the greater level of danger isn't even going to be the sheer amount of gases you release on your own, which are incredibly negligible. It's more about your health and if it is produced and used on massive scales. It's pretty complicated, and I might have to get into that in a deeper way on another day to properly give you all the details, but let's move on. The Dragon Fang increases the power of Dragon-type moves by 20%, first ever received in the Dragon's Den behind the 8th gym, though back then it did not give this level of a boost. The Fang itself can be obtained in the wild by Dragonair in later generations, Bagon, Shelgon, and Druddigon, which is very interesting as it insinuates that not every dragon loses teeth regularly or their teeth don't provide the same level of power. These are also some pretty large teeth, once again hardly fitting inside the palm of a hand. What's wild though is that they give it lore in the anime. A Dragon Fang first appeared in Beauty is Skin Deep as the treasure of Claire's family, kept in the Blackthorn Gym. It is the fang of an ancient dragon Pokemon that terrorized Blackthorn City. The Dragon Fang is part of a ritual with the purpose of bringing peace to all dragon-type Pokemon. The ritual involves the Blackthorn Gym leader placing it on a special ceremonial table, then pouring water over it, causing a light dragon to burst out of it and rise into the sky. Legend says that this light dragon becomes a star and watches over all dragon-type Pokemon. There's just such a deep lore and worship over dragons in the world of Pokemon, even making it so that in the manga, the Elder of the Dragon Den does wear a hat with Rayquaza on it, tying even further then why there's the embedded tower that is meant to serve as a resting spot for Hoenn's legendary trio within Johto. Maybe the many cults of Pokemon need to have light shed upon them in a future video as well. The Fairy Feather, which gleams faintly when hit by light, boosts the power of the holder's fairy-type moves by 20%. It was introduced in Paldea and has no direct lore, but the shape of the wing immediately makes me think of one of my favorite fairy-type Pokemon of all, Togekiss, all thanks to that little spiral it has. Nothing else of significance to say here. The Heartstone is an unbreakable stone that is noted to, I guess, be breakable in the future, as it is just noted as a durable stone in future generations that boosts the power of rock-type moves by 20%. You can get it from Pokemon in the wild, all of them being Aeron, Lairon, Onix, Graveler, Nosepass, Corsola, Roggenrola, Boldore, Dwebble, and Crustle. Corsola is the wild card of them all because it insinuates that there must be calcium in it thanks to the composition of coral, but then we have the rest of these guys. What it most likely is then is just your average rock or geode that contains or is made up of a number of different materials. A granite of sorts, maybe. It's not a perfect explanation, but it does tell us that the composition does change as the description implies over the years. The Magnet increases the power of electric type moves by 20%, of course, held by Magneton and Nosepass, both being naturally incredibly magnetic Pokemon. It's even the same exact magnet that we do see on the sides of Magnemite, so I'm unsure if they shed magnets, this is made in their image, or if these are pieces of Magnemite that were left behind, as there are Pokemon who will eat metal and rock, but not eat magnetic material. Take your pick. The Miracle Seed is a seed imbued with life that boosts the power of grass-type moves by 20%. There are very few Pokemon who have it surprisingly in the wild, though it includes Cherubi, Cherim, Maractus, and Pumpkaboo. Maractus is easy to explain as it is a keystone species within Pokemon, as without it, and the many seeds it disperses regularly, it is noted that desert life would not be able to thrive as those seeds are an important source of food. Then at least with Cherubi, it does have a vestigial secondary head that just stores all the necessary nutrients it needs in order to evolve, thus being a miracle seed in its own right. And lastly, the Pumpkaboo Miracle Seed must just be an ironic joke, because Pumpkaboo does steal people away and is formed from spirits, all while pumpkins do have a ridiculous number of seeds. The Mystic Water, or Mysterious Droplet, is a teardrop-shaped gem that boosts the power of water-type moves by 20%, which I never actually realized it was never a genuine drop of water encased in glass, it's just a gem. This insinuates a lot of things, as the first wild Pokemon to have it is Castform, of all things. You know, the Pokemon created by humans that didn't hate us afterwards, one of the few that don't hate us, they actually have a 100% chance of carrying it, which makes me wonder if that's how Castform actually works. That there's a gem inside of its body that it uses, and when it changes with the natural weather, that's what causes cast form to change. Alternatively, the only other Pokemon with it are Lapras, Goldeen, Seaking, Dewpider, and Araquanid. Even Lapras has a 100% chance of being found with one, making it seem like the gem may be a super frozen, never melt ice crystal situation. This just becomes more and more strange the more I try to figure it out. At least with Goldeen and Seaking, they're seen as majestic in that world, while our spider Pokemon could be equated to making webs and having droplets of water on them. I guess it's, just as mysterious as the name suggests, and I'm not going to be able to figure it out here. Also did not mean to mention the never melt ice right before talking about it. That was just a happy coincidence, but here we are. It is a piece of ice that literally repels heat and boosts the power of ice-type moves by 20%. Dugong, Snover, Abomasnow, Cryogonal, and the Vanillite line all can be found with it, although Vanillux has the highest chance at 50%, likely because it has achieved its dream and full wish of never melting, and is cold enough that it will likely never face that risk ever again. This item is an anomaly, as repelling heat implies a level of entropy even lower than what normal ice has, while also finding a way to have the energy to repel heat as if it generates the cold itself somehow. I am far too deep into explaining all these items to run the complicated science of this. I'm confident one of you would be able to figure out how this works theoretically in the comments, even though it should not exist at all. So someone help me here. The Poison Barb increases the power of poison type moves by 20%, and all the usual suspects do have a chance of carrying this as you would expect. Anything with toxic barbs or spines or quills, they're here. Beedrill, Cacnea apparently, Budew Duo because every rose has its thorns, Arbok, which must be thanks to its fangs, Tentacool Duo thanks to them being jellyfish and having stingers, quote unquote, Quillfish, Scorpion, and Drapion thanks to the stinger again, but properly this time, Venipede, the Marini Duo, and then of course, only starting in Gen 5 did Vespiquen have the chance of carrying it. Once again, stingers, barbs, thorns, and I guess short, sharp teeth. They all qualify to fall off and be used as this item. The Sharp Beak is noted to be long and sharp, of course, while boosting flying type moves by 20%. Of course, then Pokemon with long sharp beaks would be found holding this. This would include very few Pokemon, Spearow, Fearow, Doduo, Dodrio, and Skarmory, which two of these Pokemon, being Fearow and Skarmory, are built to be scavenger Pokemon more than anything, so that's a little surprising. This beak is also likely from prey that they've attacked, as it's one of the few pieces left behind. I worked at a state forest once, and a momentarily terrifying thing was just finding a pair of wings still attached to the center vertebra sitting on a random table in the middle of the woods. My ranger let me know that this isn't uncommon, but the location is weird, and that it's just one of the few things left behind after a bird eats another bird. So I guess the same thing could be said about the beak. The Silk Scarf came into existence, but was once the Polka Dot Bow and the Pink Bow before they got replaced by this item. It is a sumptuous scarf that boosts normal type moves by 20%. You can first get it from the Ace Trainer in Dewford Town, but otherwise in the wild you only find it with Trubbish and Garbodor, making it a bit less sumptuous, I'd say. It's a cute little accessory more than anything, and normal type Pokemon were often associated with cute. It might still be, depending on who you are. What's wild though is that it even boosted the holder's confusion damage until Generation 5. Meaning if you were confused, you would do more damage to yourself, and I'm not sure what they were trying to imply with that one. Silver Powder is a shiny powder that boosts bug type moves by 20%. It is absolutely the shed scales of bug Pokemon, as we see Butterfree, Venomoth, Masquerain, and Volcarona all having a chance of carrying this item in the wild. Masquerain says nothing about shedding scales in its dex, but it does have trouble flying in the rain, so that might be all the telltale sign we need to tie it together and inference that it does have scales on its wings. Based on the rest of these Pokemon though, I would not inhale the silver powder at all, because you will in fact die from some level of poisoning, or you'll have the oxygen sucked out of your lungs. The soft sand is soft sand. I don't know what you want me to say. I can feel the insanity slowly setting in. Help. Now, this item though is silky loose sand that boosts ground type moves by 20%, which the composition makes it sound like it's silty sand or silty loamy sand. Depends on how much water it's able to hold ultimately, as it can still be loose but hold some form and some water and keep itself together, right? That's just the soil nerd coming out of me. I spent a summer studying soil of a number of different locations, and any opportunity I have to talk about that is a rare one, so I take my shots. Otherwise, this item is held by Pokemon who are known to do a lot of digging or be composed of sand, making it so the fine grains are made rounder, smoother, siltier overall. This means Trapinch, Sandslash, the Diglett line, Stunfisk, and Nincada all have the chance to carry it. Or, I guess it would be more apt to say it is on them, or in their mouth, or a part of them, depending on which ones we're talking about. Just, I don't know, get a brush and take some sand off the top. The spell tag is our corrupted form of the cleanse tag, overwhelmed with spiritual energy and transformed into something to aid the evil spirits that it once kept at bay. It, of course, then boosts the power of ghost-type moves by 20%. It is literally called the Cursed Ofuda or Curse Ofuda in Japanese, and can be found on Mischievous as a spellcaster, the Duskull line, who has incredible spiritual energy, same for the Shuppet line as Cursed Toys, Haunter, Coffagrigus, and Sandygast. All Pokemon that can sometimes be incredibly malevolent beings in their lore. Their power's too strong for the Ofuda to stop, and that's pretty dope. The last item before we get into our finale of legendary items is the Twisted Spoon, a classic item that serves as a point of focus in classic media for psychics to use their power. A spell focus for all my D&D nerds out there, a catalyst to concentrate energy. It of course boosts the power of psychic type moves by 20%, and I would say is the signature item of the Abra line, more specifically Kadabra. We are in the finale, the last items that take us past the total count of 118 items, and we're beginning with a beloved mechanic being Mega Stones. These aren't technically legendary items, but there are legendary Pokemon who have them, such as Heatran, Darkrai, and my boy Zygarde. I knew before the game even released that there would be a Mega Zygarde. Everyone didn't believe it, but I have my prediction and theory videos that show just how much I predicted, and I love it. All the way down to Lysander coming back and working for Zygarde to help us defeat the final boss. Nevertheless, these stones are concentrations of Pokemon life energy, the very basis for all Pokemon. This is reinforced in a number of ways, from Xerneas granting Diancie the ability to Mega Evolve in her own debut movie, to the confirmation that every time the ultimate weapon is fired, new Mega Pokemon are effectively brought into existence. This means that the energy is being converted within a Pokemon, and then when that Mega Pokemon forms, they can be defeated as we see with Rogue Megas, then resulting in a Mega Storm being created. Though they don't always have to go rogue. The energy can simply be consumed in some way, absorbed even, and then eventually physically manifest. They've manifested underground as though they were diamonds, they've manifested in space, and of course within Rogue Mega Pokemon, so there are a number of ways for them to come into existence. They then become a catalyst, much like Z crystals for the bond and power between humans and Pokemon, some needing more energy and power, as we see with Mega Zygarde, who comes into existence thanks to the wishes of mankind in a great moment of need. And that all just still makes me so giddy and so happy, and a video just about Mega Stones and how we influence the creation of Mega Pokemon has been in the books for a while that I just am waiting to try and find the right thread of inspiration to then create, but let's move on. The trio of Myth, Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina each have orbs that have eroded in the modern day to the Crystal, Core, and Globe, no longer bearing the same exact level of power that they once had. Though these items are just necessary to help them transform into their origin forms, their more powerful forms that are the visages that they take on in their home realm. Although Dialga and Palkia can't do that anymore, not with the modern day gems. These are, though, also likely some of the remnants of Arceus' power that are talked about in the Plates of Arceus, the last of its power that it turns to stone and bestows upon the planet, burying it in the planet. Either that, or it has to be the Origin Ore, or some people might believe it's Regigigas, and again, that doesn't mean it has to be mutually exclusive, and it could be all of these things. And it could be that all of these things were the last of Arceus' physical power before it decided to rest. The Adamant And Lustrous Orb would also be the basis for Adamant and Irida, while also being the items that the original leaders of their clans would base themselves after. The very same leaders that are the ancestors of Archie and Maxie, we assume, showing that Team Aqua and Magma are just a corruption or perversion of the original themes of Diamond and Pearl, granting a much greater connection throughout time and space within the franchise. These items hold so much incredible potential for lore, and even if we just look at the Grishis core, it seems to take shape in the form of Pyrite, otherwise known as Fool's Gold, something that was pointed out to me by someone by the name of Elements and Stuff, throwing in the idea that of course only a fool would believe Giratina was the true god and follow it instead of Arceus. I'll return to these items in the future, they deserve more time than I can give them here in this video. Speaking of the power of Arceus, the memories of Silvally, or Silvally, I think it's pronounced Silvally and I always mess that up, are meant to mimic the plates of Arceus through the RKS system. Discs that are slotted into the side of Silvally's head that then change its typing and the typing of its multi-attack move. They are literal memory drives or memory discs with one of each type, except, of course, there is no legendary memory, as we would see with the legendary plate of Arceus. What's also strange is that files in Aether Paradise mention 18 memories, but only 17 have been ever made available since there is no normal type memory. This might actually line up with our understanding of Arceus once more, though even it had the blank plates for normal typing. It's just a strange situation all in all. Up next are the masks of Ogerpon. These masks are seemingly composed of terrestrial crystals, though they are said to be from incredibly far away, so one would think it couldn't be from Terrapagos. There are only two solutions to this puzzle then. One would be that Terrapagos was moved by Regigigas without realizing it as the continents moved, or there are other Terrapagos out there somewhere in the world. Each of these masks have a different effect, though the teal mask is just standard with no additional effect. Each mask gives Ogerpon otherwise the additional typing that matches the mask and boosts all attacks by 20%. Each of the masks also change Ogerpon's signature move, Ivory Crudgel, into that type when originally it is a pure grass move. Wellspring for water and a grass water Ogerpon, Hearth Flame for fire and fire grass Ogerpon, and then Cornerstone for rock and then a rock grass Ogerpon. Also, note something interesting, which is that the Hearth Flame is the only one with a significantly different original translated name, actually being the Komodo mask. Now, Komodo is more than just the name of Commander Komodo, it is literally the word that translates to stove or cooking range, a hearth. So it still holds the same meaning and gives us a little insight into Komodo, as he is a very strong-minded, maybe even hot-headed individual, if not at the very least, very fiery and passionate for what he believes in. One last time, these and any of the other legendary items could have a whole video about them and their respective Pokemon, so I won't go ridiculously deep here, nor will I on our next Pokemon, as I have a video in mind for it that I'm eager for very soon. The plates of Arceus are shrouded in mystery, plates that were created from the power of defeated giants after Arceus was born at the beginning, within an era before time and space even existed. These plates hold powers beyond our current understanding and allow Arceus to transform itself and its judgment into even more devastating forms. In addition, they boost the moves that correspond with their type by 20%. And within the movie, we can see that it bears these plates within its own body, using them, transforming at a whim to dominate in battle, and even granting boons to the people of the world by combining them together. In one movie, it is able to make the lands fertile and lush. In another, it would create the prison bottle meant to imprison Hoopa's unbound form originally, making it so that these powers are only bestowed from a god itself. But these plates also keep Arceus alive, because without all the plates at its disposal, it can be defeated, it can be killed. Which of course, the Arceus we know isn't the one true Arceus, but just a fragment of it, of a greater being we only see the light of at the beginning of Pokemon Legends Arceus. Though if a fragment was defeated, killed even, then what would that mean for other fragments? What would it mean for the greater being, as those are all defeated and the one true being stands on high, too powerful yet unable to do anything, as power that great is limiting? I love Arceus lore because it has gone so much deeper than I ever expected, and I really want to have a video digging specifically into the plates, what they've done, the locations we find them, and so much more, because there's just that much to discuss one day in a dedicated video. Our semi-finale is the Rusted Sword and Shield of Galar, the very same 2 items necessary to bring Zacian and Zamazenta into their crowned hero forms. Now, it is strange that they are rusted with no drawback in the games. Meanwhile, in the manga, the rust is caused by Eternatus in an effort to prevent them from being used, as it's not rust, but a corrosive venom. Of course, the manga took a liberty with that one, since there's no real sign that this is an issue in the games, but it's at least something that's a little extra fun, you know? Otherwise, it is truly symbolic of just how old these legendary wolves are, how they've been here for thousands of years, protecting Galar and sleeping in between great battles, as they are otherwise forgotten and buried in time and history by royals who wanted all the glory to themselves. Our final item of the day is the Soul Dew. If held by Latios or Latias, or a Pokemon transformed into one, it increases the power of its Psychic and Dragon type moves by approximately 20%. This is a sad item to end on, but it is the form Latios takes at the end of the Pokemon Heroes movie, the one it assumes in order to save Alto Mare and all of its residents from imminent destruction. More than this, when we look at the final moves of Latios, we see Power Split and Memento. Its power is literally being split into something new, and the only memento of it being left behind is the Soul Dew itself. Its body and soul now transformed as it watches over the city, hopefully ensuring tragedy never strikes it ever again. Although there is one other detail, which is that in the Japanese trailer of the 5th movie, it was originally described as the crystallized tears of Latios and Latias, which seems to be somewhat true based on their final encounter. Even if this isn't entirely canon, as it's not in the final versions, Pokemon tears are full of life energy, something given to us since the 1st movie, and life energy is shared amongst all things within the world of Pokemon, explaining why even this Soul Dew can be used to keep balance with the environment itself in Alto Mare. But with that, I've explained the lore and mechanics of every single current held item in Pokemon. I wanted to do this in one singular video in honor of past me, who did this in one go way back then with in-depth coverage, but not nearly this deep, I'd say. If you enjoyed, subscribe, because I have deep dives galore on this channel that I'm confident you'd enjoy, especially as they wouldn't be as disjointed feeling as covering all of these items was. I want to also thank members of the channel who you do see on screen. Their support goes the extra mile, as it helps make sure I can take the extra time necessary to go wild with videos like this and bring content to everyone. If you want behind the scenes info, early access to videos, and members exclusive videos, become a member for as little as $3 a month. There's a nice list of videos already waiting for you. Also, let me know if there's anything I missed, or the held item you'd use if you were a Pokemon. I love reading comments, and they boost the algorithm alongside likes, shares, and hyping the video, which goes a very long way. Lastly, one of the best comments from this past week was from Feyre Dragon, who commented on my best legendary pet video. I'd imagine feeding Articuno is particularly difficult if it were a seed eater, because all the plants around would be buried under snow. It probably is more like an owl eating buried Rattata, given that alone, unless it has a habit of preying on Snover or something. And honestly, a good number of people are questioning if Articuno might actually eat other Pokemon. Its beak says otherwise, but there's still a chance it has a diet that goes against the rules, so I'm willing to abide by the many ideas that people might have. But that is all for today. This was a 58-page script that I now have to go edit. Wish me luck with the heat. So I'm going to get going. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Don't do anything I would do. Please be nice to each other. I love you, and I will see you next time.